What are we doing?
Dropping some breaking news.
What's this breaking news, Josh?
Well, I don't want to give it away. However, we do have the best on RS belt.
Best on RS. Yeah. Boom, right in the center of the podcast.
Yeah, let's cut to the chase. The party's coming back. Best on RS 2023. It's coming back.
It's happening, and it's happening big.
Yep.
You've been asking about it for 3 years. We're making it happen. We're bringing it back this year. SEMA 2023, Thursday night, 9:30, Aria Hotel.
We're doing it. It's happening.
It's really happening. Start hydrating.
Oh, I thought this was practice. So it's really happening.
Oh, yeah. It's going down.
Go to roadstershop.com to register for the Best on RS competition. Top 5 get a really badass thing that we want to not talk about.
On the belts, I don't know. It hasn't come together fully yet, but it is awesome.
There will be 5 of these things at the booth in SEMA, our booth. You can come by and see them. The winner of those 5 will get, let's face it, the absolute best,
the most coveted award in the hot rod industry by far. Yeah.
Previous winners such as Scott from Sick Jobs,
David Kindig.
Kindig
Design.
And Mr. Kevin Dog.
We're also bringing back Best on the Rest for anybody that has a badass car that stops us in our tracks that unfortunately or may not have a full chassis. Definitely not on a Roadster Shop chassis, other suspension, other items. We want to, we got some great customers out there, and
there's a lot of cool stuff out there that we like and want to, include in the atmosphere that we're putting together.
And that's just something we're going to pick. We're going to pick 3.
At the end of the day, it's about having a kick-ass party with kick-ass people, bringing the hot rod community together. So even if it's not on a Roadster Shop chassis, we'll be out there hunting for what we think is the baddest car, not on a Roadster Shop chassis. Previous award winner, Ring Brothers.
Yep. And
got some heavy hitters out there.
Absolutely. We're really happy to be able to bring the party back. We had a lot of fun a couple years ago when we did the last one. We really want to say thank you to all of our customers, chassis customers, car build customers, vendors, friends, acquaintances.
Hot rod industry in general
It's amazing how many acquaintances you'll have when you do like open bar. Lots of acquaintances.
A lot of good friends.
It's awesome. It's pretty cool. Crazy.
But yeah, we're fortunate to be in the position we are because of all you guys and the great customers we've got out there.
And it's all about hanging out. We know the SEMA show, when you're there, it's fast paced. You're bouncing around. You usually don't get too much of an opportunity to rub elbows and shoot the shit with your peers. And this is an all night extravaganza.
Very
cocktails.
Very short on the speaking in the program. We're gonna condense that. We've got a great, bigger, better venue, place we've never been in before. It's going to be awesome. May or may not be some celebrity sightings.
You're going to be there, right?
I heard Tim Strange might be there. Yeah. Damn. Yeah.
There's a limit how many people can come, right?
I know.
Start throwing that out there, dude. It's oh boy.
Go to roadstershop.com, register for the Best on RS.
Looking forward to seeing you guys out there.
Not if I see you first.
Let anybody into this place, huh?
This is where all the... all right. Honestly, this is going to sell out, so you better act fast. This is the most coveted award. However, the event that it is given out at is
an award in itself.
It's probably it's the go-to place. I mean, there's a lot of cool things to do in Vegas. Thursday night, November 2nd, 9:30 at Aria.
Probably be the coolest thing you can do.
Yep.
Let's face it. You're at SEMA. Everybody's bouncing around from casino to casino, trying to make your way up to the bar, trying to find out where guys are at. This is where they're going to be.
Best on RS party.
This is the place to be. And I'm looking forward to see who leaves it all on the field out there. There's always one. There's always one who leaves a lasting impression.
Mike Rain.
And a memory we can never forget. So who's going to be that guy or girl?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Best on RS 2023, November 2nd, Thursday night, 9:30 at the Aria. Go to roadstershop.com right now. There's a button right there on the main page. Click on it to get your tickets.
Tickets are limited. Register early.
It's going to sell out. It's going to sell out. But, we can only do what we can do. You got to act fast. roadstershop.com.
every time you pick up that chisel, you have to make that chisel do what you want it to. And so when you look at my work, what you see is a recording in steel of how good I was that day, right then at that second. Because it doesn't matter all the stuff I've done up to that. The 44 years that I've worked at that make no difference on how that recording looks. It's got to be that recording that's good. You understand what I mean?
I do.
It captures, yeah. And so if I'm not on my A game, and if I'm not doing my best, I mean, it's going to suck.
Welcome to Oil and Whiskey, an Ironclad original. I am Josh Henning.
I'm Phil Gerber.
I'm Jeremy Gerber.
Welcome to Oil and Whiskey, an Ironclad original. Today's guest is third-generation master engraver and owner of American Scroll Ink, Weldon Lister. One I think we're all super excited about.
I'm pumped about this one.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Probably one of the most talented dudes been on the podcast yet.
And there's been some talented ones. Weldon Lister, welcome to Oil and Whiskey, man.
Hey, here, guys.
Welcome.
Great to be here. Good to see y'all. Sorry for the technical stuff. My son had to bug out early today, and he's the guy who knows how to run all this stuff. So
He left you to fend for yourself?
yeah, right. Like, dude, no, don't do that. Anyway, I made it this far, so must be doing something right.
Awesome. Well, man, it's an honor to have you on here. All three of us are big fans of your work. I've been following your Instagram for years, and Josh sprung it on me that we were going to have you as a guest on here, which has caught me by surprise because that's awesome.
Pretty awesome. Yeah, pretty awesome.
Thought you were out of our league.
I appreciate that. You're way too kind, but thank you. Thank you very much. Great to be here. I know you guys have had some heavy hitters on your podcast, and it's an honor for me to be here. You must be dredging the bottom of the barrel to get down to my level.
I don't know about that.
Hey, I sincerely appreciate it, So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to get it out of the way now. As I'm going ahead and predicting that we're not going to be able to get through everything in one podcast. So we're going to have to, I'm sure we're going to have to end up doing this again in the near future because there's a tremendous amount, just me talking to you back and forth over the last few months, whatever that I learned, and then started doing some of my own research and digging in. There's stories that go on. I mean, quite frankly, back to the 40s and 50s that you could tell about your dad and stuff. And I think there's a lot of people out there that may or may not even know the story of. So, yeah. There's gonna be a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of rabbit trails to go down for sure.
And we're gonna have to focus in. We got to hone in here.
We don't have to. We can just go down all the rabbit trails and see where they go.
Meander.
Yeah, I don't know whose job it is to keep us on the rails, but you got your work cut out for you. So.
There's no staying on any rails, man. This is just a walk through the forest.
All right.
Yeah. So obviously, I guess the good segue is you're most well known for your firearms engraving, which
that would be correct.
No bullshit. Not because you're here. Everybody's got their own look in engraving. I think the way you do it, what you do, and your look is my favorite. 100%. It's my absolute favorite. Your style, you can tell a Weldon Lister gun when you see it, and you can just automatically tell. And that's my favorite. There's a lot of guys out there that are super talented, and women that are super talented, and everybody's got a little different style, and cool stuff. But I, for some reason, am drawn to, and I gravitate towards your style. That being said, where did that come from?
Well, I appreciate that first. And I think, as artists, I think we all, something that you kind of aspire to is developing a style that is identifiable as yours. And I don't know that I necessarily did that on purpose. It just sort of happened. And I guess it's just an expression of who I am. And it comes out in that way. I learned how to engrave from my dad, and I'm a third generation in my family. And so as a young teenager, really, I had this thing happen. A person said to me, if you don't learn how to do what your dad does, one of these days he's going to be gone and you will always regret it. And I was 17 at the time, and I guess I had a bucket list. I don't even know if we knew what that term was back then, but I guess I had one. And I thought, well, what would I do if my dad suddenly wasn't here? And I couldn't do that. So I thought, well, I'll get around to it, And that gave me some motivation to go to him and ask him if he would teach me how to engrave. And his answer was profound. He said, "I'll show you everything I know. What you pick up will be up to you." And I thought, all right. Well, that sounds pretty cool. I said, "So when do we start?" Well, we started in August of 79, and I was 17. And by October of 79, I cut my first gun. But this is a long, roundabout answer to your question. And so where did that style come from? And so initially, the first style that I began working with under his direction was a style called American Scroll. And it was based on sort of an adaptation of a style made common and famous by L.D. Nimsky. Nimsky worked from 1854 to 1904. And so he spanned the black powder period into the percussion period. And so he's sort of the grandfather of this style. And I'll pause right there and say that, as artists, and you guys are artists as well, and in the things that you do and what you build, but none of us really invented this. We're kind of standing on the shoulders of the giants that went before us. And so for me, it was looking at this work of Nimsky and under my dad's direction, here's a scroll. This is what makes it up. And here's what we do. And so that's the first style that I started learning with. And of course, since then, I've branched out and do a lot of other styles as well. But it's the one that I started with, I'm most comfortable with, and probably have studied more than any others. And so in learning how to do that, I guess I sort of put my maybe spin on it and develop that, this kind of the way I do it kind of thing. And I guess that's what makes it look like me when you see it. And it's not, I don't, like I say, I said this earlier, I don't think I started out to go, I got to make a style that's all my own and that's mine. It just kind of evolved into what it is after a lot of time. And this is the way I see it, I guess. And so as artists, I think one of the things that you do is you want to try to get what's inside of you, in your head and in your vision and all that, out onto the canvas that you're working with. And I don't think it matters what kind of art we're talking about. We all have that vision, and we want to see it come into reality. And so how do we get that onto the canvas that we're working with? And
you said third generation. So your grandfather was the one that taught your father?
No, my dad's uncle.
Okay.
He taught him jewelry engraving. This is back in the 40s. And so that was with a push graver, a little ball vise that sits in a leather collar on a jeweler's bench. And if you've ever been to an old school jeweler's shop, you might have seen a guy that was doing that. You have a tool in your right hand, and I forget where the camera is. So I'm looking at myself going, okay, here are my hands.
You're good. Yeah.
So you're turning the work into it with a push graver, which is an excellent way to do it, but it's sort of difficult, especially to cut those deep styles using that palm graver. And so in the German and European school of engraving, they use a hammer and a chisel. So they take that chisel that's held over here, put it in a longer handle, and hold it in your left hand, and then drive that chisel with a hammer in your right hand. And so Dad learned how to do the jewelry style engraving. And then in the early 60s, he met an old German engraver just by chance, but this guy was going blind. And he said, "I can tell you what you need to do." And he didn't see so well anymore, which after engraving for 40 something years, I understand, your eyes get used a lot every day. And so he told him, drive that chisel with a hammer. You can cut that gun steel that way. And so once Dad found that out, he was off to the races and, adapted to that style. So yeah, it was my dad's uncle that taught him the basics of it. Then he expounded upon that. And then here I come. And as a kid, probably from 5 or 6, I grew up in a shop, with him doing that. and working alongside other engravers in a shop in San Antonio. And so for me, it was kind of I guess our dads all did something, and we probably thought, well, that's just what my dad does. It's not like a huge thing or, any big deal. It's just, kind of what your dad does, and it's okay. And so for me as a kid, I grew up in that shop, on school vacations and holidays and stuff. And I would see these guys. I would walk by my dad's vice and say, "Hey, what are you working on?" And he would show me a little bit. And I would look at it and go, "Oh, okay, cool." And then I'd go out and play or do whatever I was doing. So it's kind of a normal thing for me, oddly enough.
Back in the 60s and 70s, when your dad was doing so much of it, was that like single action army stuff or cowboy matches, shotguns? What was he predominantly doing?
Yeah, so back in that time, and the reason he went to work for the shop in San Antonio, the guy who ran that was Frank Hendricks, and Hendricks was a internationally acclaimed master engraver. Just happened to be in San Antonio, and so Frank had several contracts for engraving, production wise. And so commemorative series that had, all the same pattern and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of them. Well, the one that got my dad involved was the Texas Ranger commemorative. That was, it was a Colt single action, and it was produced by Colt for a couple of guys, one guy from Texas, one guy from Georgia, but they were both Texas Ranger lovers. And so they put this commemorative together, and it's 1,000 guns altogether, but the first 200 were shipped in the white, which means no finish, and they were designated for engraving. And so that's where my dad came in, because this Hendricks obviously couldn't handle this on his own, so he needed help. And my dad ended up engraving 136 out of those 200.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was on old guns like that. And at the time, you always hear when you think about engraving, somebody says, "Oh man, this is dying art." Well, back in the 50s and the 60s, it actually was a dying art, because, what we're doing right now wasn't possible. There was no internet, there was no Google, there was no resource of information, no YouTube or anything to look at. And so you had books, which behind me on the shelf, I've got a lot of reference material. You couldn't look at it. So who was it that were having guns done? It was guys that collected guns, sportsmen, that kind of thing. And most of them were old, single actions, Winchester lever actions, some shotguns, stuff like that. And yeah, so that's that.
I just want to ask, I know it's been covered by people all over the place. Everybody's got their own theories. I don't think anybody has the exact reason. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on why for generations, we have all felt the need to embellish weapons. Every society. You go back through, English shotguns, all the way back to medieval times. From a sword, you would think that there was times in our history that you were probably worried about more important things than maybe embellishing your sword, like maybe using it or stuff like that. But it's
that's an interesting.
It's funny how it's always, through all generations, there's been societies that have been fascinated with embellishing whatever that weapon be: guns, knives, swords, whatever.
Something that's supposed to be a tool that you're turning into a piece of art.
Yeah.
And then still using like a tool.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's functional art. And so even in Bible times, there's talked about in the Bible people who had that skill of engraving and embellishment. And when God gave instructions to make the tabernacle, which was the first sort of a temple that the Hebrews had, there were directions on how things were to be embellished. And so it was ceremonially done for that, back in Bible times. And so I think from the time that we were, making any kind of a tool or a weapon, there was some guy there that was going, "Hey, look at this, I can kind of jazz this up for you." And so if we went out and we did a raid on some, village or whatever, or whoever the enemy was at the time, and came back, well, we might want to, give something really nice to the guy who was the leader of the group and all that. I don't know. I mean, it's a funny thing within us that wants to do that. And so you're right. It's been done, since we had weapons, and weapons are embellished. Suits of armor are fabulous. When you go back and look at suits of armor made, 1600s, 1700s, and you look at those, and I know how to do what I do pretty well using the techniques that I do. And I look at some of the stuff that was done then, and I'm like, man, that's pretty killer for back then. Going back farther, you look at stuff that's come out of tombs from Egypt, and you look at the granulation techniques that were done on some of the ceremonial daggers that were made out of gold. And you look at it and you're going, well, that would be really hard to do right now.
Let alone
those guys didn't have any electricity or lights or, all the fancy stuff that we have. They don't have CNC mills or laser engraving anything. This was a dude doing it all totally by hand.
They had a lot more time on their hands, though, too. They didn't have any other distractions.
That's one guy's life.
Doing that.
They had 24 hours in a day, but their day was not filled with social media and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, you're right. They did have probably a longer span of time to use, but it's awesome to look at some of that stuff and just see the craftsmanship that went into it and what it took to make it. And,
it's fascinating to me when it comes to, I guess, weapons specifically, because that's kind of what we're into. I mean, we're obviously making a living embellishing and making vehicles better. We make them look good, we make them work better, we make them stuff like that.
Unfortunately, our vehicles, we don't have inspiration or roots back to the Bible. Like we chop and top. Because that looks kind of cool.
Chariots back then too.
It's kind of, it's way more, I guess, understandable, mainstream, acceptable. You don't have to question why do people customize cars. You just always have. Ever since there was cars, people were customizing them. But when you look at English shotguns, for instance, like that whole genre, industry, businesses, large companies revolve solely around building the most beautiful, finely crafted shotguns that there ever was, and they obviously work, and they work really well, but their entire company's existence is the most finely fit and engraved and embellished, and the woods and the stuff like that. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars for shotguns and stuff. And it's just intriguing to me that, for, like you said, a tool,
does the same thing as a $20 Walmart special.
To have to, it's wild.
Well, I think there's all level or strata of people. And so you got the guy that's the utility grade guy, and, he wants something that works and doesn't care what it looks like. And then you got guys that are the captains of their industry, and they want something that's nice and they can afford it, and they understand what that English company is doing, how long it takes to get one, and why it costs as much as it does, because they're guys sitting there hand fitting all those parts. It's hours and hours of work. It's a bespoke gun, which means it's made for you to your dimensions and shoots the way that you like to shoot. And so, as guys get more successful, they want finer and finer things. And some people's, even though they can afford it, there are a group of people who don't like it and it doesn't turn them on. But for the guy that has the financial wherewithal and the appreciation, that's a guy who gets that kind of stuff. And it's amazing. It's like watches. And I was going to, while you were talking, I was thinking about cars too. Well, there are cars that go from point A to point B, and what's the purpose of having?
Right.
And so, and it's the same in the gun world, because in cars, you can look at certain designs and you go, man, that is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. That's just disgusting, but it functions. It'll take you to work and take you back. It looks like a piece of junk, and it's always going to be one. But then you look at some and you go, God, that thing looks like it's going 80 miles an hour sitting still, because it has lines, it has design, it has the look. It just says something to you. Guns are the same way. You have a utility grade gun, it functions as a weapon or a sporting piece or whatever. But then you look at another one and you're going, oh man, that thing has just got the lines that just make it be beautiful. Man.
I guess it all comes back down to basically just nature and the animalistic side of us, or from we've always got to basically peacock, and everybody's got to show like that's exactly what it is. I mean, you got to think even from the lions and tigers, the ones that's got to have either the craziest beard or the most scars, or the ones that's fought the most or whatever. And some people it's their gun collection, some people it's their fancy car, some people it's their jewelry, and it's always just showing in their pack where they're at in their pack.
Yeah, for me, it's the artistry of it too. Like I've got a handful of guns. I have an engraved Henry rifle, and what is that, 4440? That old shoots those cowboy rounds, and that thing is cool, right? It's all brass engraved, and you just like looking at it, right? Seldom do I get out and actually shoot it, but you're not sitting around the house and pull out a plastic Glock and just stare at it in awe of, wow, what a beautiful piece of craftsmanship. But that's a particular, you just love looking at it, holding it. I mean, I've probably ran 10 rounds through it in 5 years, but man, do you like to look at it? And it's the same with watches and all that stuff. That's just the artistry. How did somebody craft that? It's mind blowing. Some of that stuff.
The appreciation.
Yeah. You get so much enjoyment out of that, and discouragement too, because you look at it and you're like, I'll never be able to do that. No. But this guy did, and it's awesome.
Well, is this time to tiptoe into your engraving?
Yeah,
career?
We can. So I've admired your work forever, right? And it's so inspirational, but at the same time, man, does it make you instantly defeat you? Because for me, we build cars at a very high level, so you like to do things at a high level. And when I look at what you do, I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to do it just like that, because I'm so fascinated by engraving. So I decided, this was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was going to take a class, because there's just way too much to digest to try that on my own. So I took Ray Covers, I think his name, Covers.
Ray Covers.
Yeah, went out to Missouri, and it was a 3 or 4 day class. And man, was that just an eye opener to just how difficult that is, right? So, but it was neat, because you're spending the days looking through the microscope, and it looks like what you're making is awful. It just looks terrible. And I was so discouraged the whole time until I stepped back and took it out. And then you're like, oh man, to the human eye, that's actually kind of cool, But yeah, unfortunately I didn't stick with it. And I think I've lost everything that, I learned there. But wow, it gave me so much appreciation for the art of it, just thinking so much more goes into it, like sharpening the gravers and how you do everything before you even start engraving. That it's mind blowing to me what you guys do. And I'd like to pick it up again and try it and use it as a hobby, but I don't know that, maybe I'll find the time eventually.
Well, that's what it takes, and you just got to want to. But, since you've done that and you tried it, you have probably a better appreciation now than you've ever had before when you look at stuff like that. Now you look at it from a different angle, and you're able to look at it from the inside out. And I remember when I was a kid, in my dad's shop, looking at engraving, and I just saw the overall thing, because I had no basis of understanding on how that happened. And so now, I look at it and I see it from the inside out. I see everything. And so sometimes I see it too closely, and which is what you're talking about with the microscope. When you have a myopic view of something that's made to be viewed in the hand as an entire piece, it doesn't look like it should, because you're too close to it. So you got to back up, take a look at the overall picture. And something else Josh said earlier, was like the lion in the tribe, with all the scars and all that kind of stuff. And, your cars that you build and the guns that I do, what I strive for, go back to the lion. You look at those scars and you go, this guy's got a story. He's got character. He's not brand new. He's not spotless and shiny. He's been through it, and it shows. But he's on the other side. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So he's got a story. I want my work to look like that. I want it, even though it's done right now today, I want it to invoke in the viewer something about that it wants to tell a story to you, that it has some character, that it wasn't bought at Walmart or, produced at the plastic factory, like my dad used to say. You don't want them looking like they were pumped out down at the plastic factory, I'm like, well, Yeah, I get it. And so, and for people that want a Glock, I have a Glock and I want my Glock to work, and I'm glad that it does, because if I need it, I'm pretty sure it's going to work. Right.
Sure.
I never look at it, because it's like, so what? I like looking at those old guns that have character, or you want to know, man, if that gun could tell you the story of its life and what it's been through, And so the pieces that I produce, I want them to have that sort of vibe to them.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting you say that, because they also, when you do what you do and other artists do what they do, it doesn't become another really nice looking cult government model, right? They become characters. They become one of one. They become their thing. They have a personality. Yep. I mean, I see that pair of cult government models that you did that still to this day are the best looking ones. And you see them pop up and you see them other pictures and you see those are like two characters. Those aren't two cults anymore. Those are the Weldon Lister pair of guns. And I see them all the time, and I think about, like, where are they at now and what's the story? Like you said, they've got a story. They've been places. I want to know where they are. Like, seriously, like, where are they at?
That's because you're hoping that somebody fell on hard times and had to pawn them.
It's exactly what I want.
You're going to get a hold of them.
The funniest part of that is the guy that I initially did those for. Now, he sold them. I don't know where they are now, but the collector I did those for, was going to use those as his concealed carry pieces.
Wow.
I told him, I said, dude, don't do that. He said, why not? I said, this guy lives either in New York or Florida, right? He's got the right to carry in New York, which you can't do, but he can. I said, dude, you're going to be in New York. You're going to pull that gun out to look at it, and you're going to get in trouble. Don't carry those, because you can't not look at them. So anyway, he said, you're right. I don't think I better do that. And so he kept them privately, and then went through a divorce and had to sell them. So don't know where they are now. Bummer, right?
Yeah, if anybody's listening knows where those guns are at.
DM us.
Send Josh a DM.
Yeah, really would like to know.
I mean, man, Josh just pulled them up here. We're kind of glancing at some stuff.
We've got
some technical difficulties. We can't pull them up on the big screen, but
I know where those guns were made. I know where they were done. Yeah. So don't worry if you can't find them.
You know a guy?
Yeah,
I know
you. Yeah. You.
What kind of hours are in something like that? Like, to do a complete 1911, how long does that take you?
If you ever get that picture up where you can look at those, I think I can tell you days wise, I think it was like 40 some odd days on the first one.
Wow.
And then 38 on the second one. The second one went a little faster because I knew what I was doing in the design and layout, which is a really important part of engraving. And so how those patterns all fit on the area that you want, how it looks overall. There's a lot that goes into the backside of engraving before you ever start working on something. And so with gun one, I was designing it and putting it together and got it completed. Well, then in that span of time, he's like, man, I want another one just like it. I'm like, all right. So the second one was built off of the first one, if that makes sense. And so I had everything where I needed it to be layout wise. I will say that even on, mass produced firearms like that, there's a difference in size. And it's not a big deal until you're dealing in my world where everything is super tiny. And if it's, over the line too big, well, that doesn't work, so you got to redesign it. So you can't always transfer everything off of one onto another one because of that. So.
And we just pulled them up on the screen in front of us. Unfortunately, we can't pull them up for the world to see, but that is undoubtedly the most beautiful piece of art that I've ever
100%.
seen.
100%.
It's mind blowing. It really, like, we have some incredible people on here that build some unbelievable cars, and it's like you can digest like how to do that, and other guys doing other things. That's just one of those things that's mind blowing. You're like, wow.
You mentioned bucket list at the very beginning, and that's one day. Going back to your one day.
Start with a little Swiss Army knife or something.
Yeah, we'll just start with something small.
Start small, work up. That's fine.
A payment plan or something. You talked about your dad teaching you and stuff. Do you remember, and we talked about Jeremy learning, the basics. What was the first thing your dad started you out? Like lesson one, what is, and do you approach this the same way if you're training somebody or teaching somebody? What was the first thing he said do?
Yeah, the first thing that he said to do, he had a steel plate, and like now you can go to Home Depot and get them. So it's just, cold roll steel plate, 6x12. And he put that on a piece of plywood, put on with Bondo, which I'm sure you guys have heard of, right?
Yep.
Well, we use it a lot because Bondo is really cool for holding weirdly shaped parts or real thin parts or whatever. And so, you've worked with it, you know how it is. And so what we discovered is that when you warm it up, it loses its grip. So you can bid real weird parts in it that have all kinds of strange shapes, warm it up to about 300 degrees, and you can pop it right out. And so it leaves a cavity that looks pretty much like whatever it was. So there's the engraving tip for any engraving students that might be listening.
Free tip.
A lot of guys use different stuff. They use Thermalock or whatever. And for me, that's what I learned how to use, what I like to use. It smells pretty funky when you mix it up. So
smells like home to us.
Yeah, actually me too, because I started smelling that when I was about 5 or 6. It might be what's wrong with me. I smelled too much Bondo being mixed with the whole gun parts. But anyway, so he put this piece of steel on this plate, and then he drew a scroll design on there. So it's just a big scroll and then some little tapering finials off of that. And then he did the shading on it. He did all the parts that make it be what it is, the background and all that, right? He said, okay. So he had me watch him do that. And he said, now I'm going to show you how to transfer. And so we're pretty old school. Long time ago, they would use lamp black, which is like the soot off of a lamp, and you put the soot on whatever it is that you want to transfer, and then you could put a piece of paper carefully on there and pick that design up that way. And more into modern times when tape started becoming available, you could take tape, lift that design off, and place it somewhere else. So now we use fingerprinting. And so fingerprinting is a great transfer medium, I guess. And so he put fingerprinting all over that design, took some Scotch tape, put it on the design, lifted it off, and then set it on the corner of that plate. He said, okay, now I want you to cut that, and I want you to make it look like that. If you have any questions, ask me. So it's like, oh, dude, And so I started doing that. And the first one looks like you might expect. It's awful. But as they went around that plate, I kept lifting that same design and doing it. And so what that did really was let me learn what the tool does, what I need to do to that tool to make a cut that looks like that, and then put all those elements in it. And as I progressed around that plate with those designs, you could see an improvement to the point where by that October, he said, hey, I think you're ready to cut a gun. I was like, yes, and then, are you sure? As for me growing up, that was like the pinnacle, right? I was going to be a gun engraver. So, plates of steel are cool, but they ain't a gun,
right?
So now it's like, okay, I'm going to cut a gun. Would I recommend that now? Probably not. But I had him watching over my shoulder, helping me. I lived at home then still, and so didn't have anything else to do. And it was a lot of fun, or at least I thought it was. And so he helped me through that first gun. And the either second or third gun I cut was for a Texas Ranger. And I know you guys aren't from here, but in Texas Rangers are the top law enforcement state guys, and they're a big deal, and they always have been. And so I was 17 years old. I'm going to cut a gun for a Ranger. And I thought, well, if I mess this up, this guy's either going to kill me or I'm going to be in prison for the rest of my life. Yeah. So I better do a good job.
Or I'll have a get out of jail free card if I do a good job. Right?
Yeah, right. Or, there's always that. I did okay, and he liked it. But to answer your question, I kind of use some of those techniques now, and it depends on where someone is. I taught a class in Oklahoma at Murray State College one time, and I had people in that class. It was hammer and chisel engraving, right? Part of the NRA summer gunsmithing program. And so if you had no experience, but you wanted to know about it, you signed up for the class. And then I had people, and there were people like that. They had no clue. And then I had people that were pretty good, you know, and anything in between. And so trying to juggle all of those skill levels at the same time is pretty tough. But I kind of revert back to that. You know, here's what you want it to look like. Here's what we're doing. Here's how you do it. And so when you teach something, it makes you go back and study how you do it. Because if you're like me and you've just done it, you don't think a whole lot about what you're doing. You're just doing it. And so, and because by practice and by developing muscle memory, you get those things sort of on automatic. And that way you don't have to be thinking about all those things that are necessary. And then you can, you know, go to town creating whatever you're creating. And so the point was, you tell people, well, you know, how hard do you hold the chisel down? Well, pretty hard. Well, what's pretty hard? You know, not real hard, but
right. It just comes natural to you. You don't.
Yeah. And so I'm like, how do you tell somebody press down, you know, with 4 pounds? And so we took a scale, put a vise on it, and put a piece in it, and I engraved. And we watched the needle go to 8 pounds. So I'm pushing down 8 pounds, right? Okay, now we know a number and how hard. So I got all them over there by the scale. I'm like, push down 8 pounds, and you can feel how hard it is, and you can see. And so we did that. And
some reference.
Exactly, a point of reference to go through, because telling you to push down sort of hard really doesn't do much. But if you go push down 8 pounds and here's what that feels like, well, that's okay. You know, it's a better way.
And then you certainly run into the guy too in that class. He's like, well, I usually push down 6 pounds. Every time, that's my
guy that knows.
Every time I've done it, I did some metal shaping classes years and years ago, and I took that engraving class because I knew nothing, and it's apparent I know nothing. So I will.
That's why you're taking the class,
yes,
right?
I will sit there and listen to everything, and I will supply you with zero knowledge. I'm just going to listen and do. And every single time I've done one, there's always somebody within that class. You know, usually you're talking 4 or 5 people that ruins the experience. That is terrible,
like
has no experience, but is an expert. And it's brutal. Like I even Googled, like I started researching because I was passionate about wanting to learn it. I'll do like internship. Granted, I have a business and I can't step away, but to do one-on-one time when you don't have to deal with that.
Right.
But
there's always the one guy who's got to show off to the expert to look cool in their eyes.
Right. No shame in not knowing.
I try to stop that by going, look, there's usually more than one way to do something. And I'm going to show you the way I do it. That doesn't mean it's the only way to do it or maybe the best way, but it's what works for me. And so watch what I do, learn what I do. If you have a better way, by all means, go.
You don't have to take the class next time. You can just do it.
Yeah, right. I'll be in your class next time.
Yeah.
You know? Hey,
have you learned anything yourself or made your own skill set better through teaching and trying to dive into your own head to figure out how you do things or why you do them?
Yeah, initially when I was first, going to teach, that really made me sit and write down a lot of what I do and think it through. And I figured out there are 11 different things, a minimum of 11 different things going on at the same time while I'm standing there at the vise, because I stand and work and the vise is, it's about right there, top of the vise. And so I'm moving. And so I'm moving around like that. And, as I'm engraving. And so there's all these different things that are going on. So it made me dissect it. A while ago, I said, all these things are like automatic pilot. And because I've done it so long, I don't even think about it. But in order to show someone how you do that, I felt it necessary to analyze what I do, figure it out, and tell them, it seems overwhelming at first. It really does, because there's so many things that have to happen. You need to know all of these things need to happen and work on them. You'll get to the point once you work through that all those things start just happening and you don't have to think about each one. It's kind of like playing an instrument or dancing or, anything that you use a lot of skill. we all have a lot of talent. I think God gives us all different talent. We don't all have the same talent, but it's up to us to take that and develop it. And it takes a lot of practice to make that happen. And as long as you practice correctly, and you're moving in the right direction, then you're going to get better. If you're practicing wrong, then you're going to get really good at being bad,
That's a good piece of advice.
Yeah. It's way easier to learn now than it was when I first started because of what we're doing right now. I could be giving a class to you guys right now. I mean, we could be real time giving a class, and there are people who
let's go down and get some engravers. Yeah.
Right. And but there are people who do that, and think about the technology. It's so cool because I can share what took me, over 40 years to figure out. And I can tell you that. And I don't mind doing that. I really don't, because I can tell you all day long everything I know. You still have to do it.
Yeah.
It's not like I can give you the secret code to program your CNC where it's going to run faster, So I don't have a problem sharing. Going back to when I said engraving was a dying art in the 50s and 60s, there were all these old guys that had started out, prior to World War II. They were getting to the end of their career, and they learned it by being an apprentice and working for somebody and being almost slave to them every day, working and learning. They did not want to share what they knew. Most of them did not want to share. And I think the fear was they would train somebody who was going to take their clientele and, go overshadow them, and they were going to lose their business. And I think that's what it was. I wasn't here then. I don't know for sure, but I believe that's it. So there was this real closed school, and that's not good for growth or longevity, because if you don't share what you know and other people, younger people, don't learn it and keep it alive, it's not going to live, no matter how much people like it that want it. You got to have somebody doing it. So now, going back to when I started, you would wait for a magazine to come out that might have had a small article with a couple of pictures of engraving in it. Books came out. God bless R.L. Wilson. He wrote more engraving books than anybody I know. Colt book of engraving, Winchester book of engraving. There's like 3 editions of the Colt engraving book. I mean, on and on and on. His love for engraving was priceless, in my opinion, because he took really good pictures. He got really good pictures, and he put them in books, and he told stories sometimes about the engravers who did them, but he gave you really good looks at engraving. Guys, that was it back then. I mean, unless you knew somebody who was an engraver, fast forward to now, I can get on my phone and I can look at engraving from around the world. Some of it's awful, and some of it is just brilliant. And, I could sit here for hours looking at it and learning about it on YouTube or this or that. And so social media has helped out a lot. In the other thing, I think the renaissance of engraving in our country is tied to the development of pneumatic engraving tools. And John Rohner and Don Glaser kind of invented together this machine called this is the quick version, by the way. So if anybody's going to sleep,
no, you're on.
I'm glued to this one. I'm intrigued, man. Keep going.
Okay. So these guys built a pneumatic engraving tool, and this was back in the 60s. I don't know what year, latter 60s, right? They actually came by Hendrix when my dad was there and tried to get Frank interested. And Frank's like, nah, ain't having it. Hammer and chisel guy, cool deal, but not us, right? Anyway, so what it did, remember when we initially talked about the jeweler who held that device in this hand and that? So when you went to Ray Cover's school, you used a Lindsay tool, yes. I bet.
Yep.
Yeah. And so what you had was a little jeweler's burin with a mighty jackhammer in it that you could either control with your palm or with your foot.
Correct.
Like you step on the gas on the car, yep. Or there's a palm control one too that you just push on, on the end of the tool with your hand. And as you apply pressure, it opens the throttle on the thing. It's like a little miniature jackhammer.
Yep.
And so what they did when they developed the Graver Meister, was they gave jewelry engravers who knew how to do that but couldn't engrave steel. They gave them the ability. Now they can power engrave this kind of stuff. And so as this industry grew, and the industry, I mean, the making of power equipment for engraving, stone setters used it, engravers used it, other disciplines used that. And so then you start having guys that want to give classes like Ray Cover or GRS in Emporia, Kansas. They have a fabulous classroom setup, and they have multiple rooms with multiple benches, and they have instructors come. So now you have guys, for example, a friend of mine who is a student, is a monster tattoo artist in California. And I mean, his skill set, it just blows your mind when you look at what the tats that he does and what he draws and that kind of stuff. And so I look at that and I see, dude, all you need is to understand how these tools work, because you got that art inside you. And when you just shift it over from skin over to metal, it's going to be mind blowing. And so what this technology did, when they developed pneumatic engraving tools, it unlocked a door that made it way easier for people to learn. Okay. And that's my opinion. Hammer and chisel is a real hard way to learn. It's very difficult and very time consuming and can be very frustrating. And unless you have somebody like my dad standing over your shoulder going, don't do that. Did that work? No. Well, don't do that. So, unless you have the luxury of that. And I mean, I appreciate my dad so much for taking his most valuable thing, which was his time, and sharing it with me and showing me what to do. And everybody doesn't have that. And so by motorizing the engraving machine and you can sit down, you can use a microscope way easier than I can. I'm wearing my optovisors now because it's like my hat, and I forget that I'm wearing it, but it just opened up opportunity that didn't exist in this country. And so right now, I think we're in the very best time for engraving in the United States that we've ever seen. And the United States as a whole is producing work that's comparable on a world scale. And so we couldn't always say that, because there were times in this country where our work was looked at as second rate. And if you wanted something nice, it had to go to Germany or England or somewhere like that. There's still monster engravers in both those places. And but now you have these guys here in the United States who are continuing to raise the bar with what they do. And it's so fun to see that, because what that makes me know is that this art isn't dead. It is alive and it's growing. And I love that. I love engraving, and I love, it's your artwork, but you're doing it's almost like a baby. And I'm sure you guys have had projects like that where you work on something, work on it, and it just gets in you. And it's like, you almost don't want to let it go. It doesn't matter how much that check is for at the end. It's like, man, you put yourself into it. And same for me. And
the engraving,
when you have people who appreciate that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the engraving is very much like metal shaping, if you think about it. Like it's a comparable skill set, and from an equipment standpoint as well, because metal shaping, it's one thing to go fold things, bend things, weld them together, but actually like complex shaping things, like a coach builder that would create a body from scratch, really complex compound curves. For years, that was a lost art. It was dying, but the internet and the advancement in equipment totally brought that back. Like when I first got into it, it was pre-YouTube, and you had like 2 books and a couple VHS tapes from some of the legends. And I read them over and over and over again, and you could only take so much out of it, and you had to find a vintage piece of equipment to be able to do it. And then it advanced. Like we had Chris Rush on the podcast not long ago, who he's pretty much responsible for that, like creating new power hammers that are somewhat affordable. And it's really great what technology's done for all these different arts. It's really something.
Right. Yeah, like you said, more attainable.
It breathes new life into it, because you want to know. we looked at, my dad and I both, I admired sculpted engraving. And so, a lot of the American scroll that I do, it's flat, it's two-dimensional, it's a cut, there's shading, there's background, and, some other jazz going on inside it. And, it is what it is. And so if you amp that up a little bit and you go and look at the European patterns where you have these guys that are sculpting stuff and they're actually shaping the cuts, and it looks like wood carving on a miniature scale. Stuff is actually moved around and shaped. So my dad and I, he didn't know how to do that, and neither did I, but I wanted to. And so I would emulate it as the best I could. And again, this is before the internet, before YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And then I had an opportunity to go to GRS and study with Philippe Griffny from Belgium. And he was world renowned for doing that. And so by studying with him and watching what he did and how he did it, I was like, okay, I got it. I see it. Now I'm good. Because I was seeing the end result. And it was the how you get there part that was the conundrum, I guess, the Gordian knot kind of thing for me. And so it was cool to take a class and to learn those techniques. But you can see pictures of it and even read about it. But then when you see somebody do it, like on your VHS tape, it sort of helps put it all together. If you can take a class with them, then it's like, okay, I got it. I'm off to the races. So
selfishly, I'm going to keep asking a lot of questions, and everybody's just going to have to bear with me as they listen to this because I'm intrigued. But for a guy to get started, I mean, there's a little bit of a barrier of entry. There's some equipment that you need. How do you get tomorrow? I decide I want to start really applying myself and learn this.
We can do this off air. He can.
No, but I'm kidding. There's probably, there's somebody. There's at least one other dude listening to this that's like, I want to engrave something.
Right.
Well, as far as what you need and all that, it depends on which route you're going to go, because basically there's hammer and chisel engraving with no power, or there's pneumatic engraving with power. And so one of them is way less expensive than the other. So in general, you need something to hold the work that you do. So we'll go with the basic, most simple thing, right? You got to have something to hold the work, and it can be a vise. Depending on which way you're going, the vise may need to be on a stand that's hooked to a workbench that's up high enough for you to be able to use it. I don't know if you can see mine or not. I'll move my my screen. I don't know what I'm looking at here, but over there somewhere is my my vise.
Okay.
Yeah. So sunlight, right?
Got it.
But that's what mine looks like. So you got to have some work holding, something to hold your work with. You need a chisel to cut with, and you need a hammer to drive it if you're going to do hammer chisel engraving. And so I've actually thought about going to Home Depot or Harbor Freight or somewhere and just buying like stuff and put a list together and go, if you want to engrave, here, put it all together. I'll make a chisel and I'll engrave something with it. To prove that you don't have to spend $10,000 on stuff to begin to engrave. Now, it doesn't hurt that I've done it for like 44 years, so I know.
Yeah, you could probably do it with like a
talk
butter
about
knife
that
or
part
something.
of it. In this demonstration, I'll be an average guy, but actually, that might not be a bad thing to do, because it would show guys that for a few $100s, you could get into it, see if you like it, and then if you want to jump in with both feet, you go get all the Cadillac stuff. I hate seeing guys that don't know anything about it go spend between $5,000 and $10,000 on equipment, only to see a year or 18 months later it comes up for sale because they're not going to do it. And that's a big investment. Not everybody can do that. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question adequately. Yeah. You got to have something to cut on, something to cut with, and all that. So you brought up a great point though in your class with Ray Cover about sharpening and all the things you have to do before you even start to cut. When I started, my dad said, "Hey, this is how you sharpen your chisel. And so it was, watch me do this, and this is what we're doing, you know. Okay. And so we're hand stropping a razor on a ruby stone on the bench, like a 6-inch by 2-inch ruby stone, which is really hard. Not quite as hard as ceramic, but almost. And so then I would do it, and it wouldn't cut butter. You know, I'm like, hey, Dad. It's like, okay, you know, well, let me show you again. And by over and over and over and finally understanding what we're after, I was able to, now I can sharpen my chisel faster than most guys can sharpen one if they put it in a jig and do it. But it's because I've been doing it for that long. And is that the recommended practice? No, it's not, because now you can buy a fixture and some little jigs, and you can set up to get the exact angle that you need to do what you want to do. Yep. And so that right there, sharpening that tool properly every time, removes that from the equation. And that way you're not worried, you know, because it's hard enough as it is. And so when you're making this cut, then, you know, if you have to worry, well, man, did I sharpen my chisel wrong? You know, what's the matter? So if that's removed, then you don't have to worry about that. And you go, well, no, I just suck. That's what the problem is.
Yeah. I mean, that was one piece of information that I retained from that. It's like, if you don't sharpen that right, you could spend weeks trying to engrave something and it will just be a mess. So it's so
that's
difficult.
what you're blaming it on?
No, I'm not making excuses at all. I'm just saying, like, without somebody to show you exactly, to say, yes, that's sharpened correctly, you just suck, and you might get better.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Well, that hurts when you hear that. But you just suck. But
you brought up a comment earlier about like what your dad said, that he's going to show you everything, and what you actually take away from it is, you know, kind of on your own. Kind of combining that with everything that's going on with social media, and seems like you're pretty passionate on trying to continue to grow the skill set and the craftsman, and kind of get the next generation up there. You may already be doing some of this. Was there any thought on doing any type of, you know, basic entry level tutorials to get guys up to speed and start the passion and show them where they could go?
I think that is in the future for me. You know, we have a YouTube channel that, you know, I throw some stuff on. They're not very long videos, and it's not necessarily how to, but it does show that in action. As you know, it takes a lot of time to create content, and that's what we're talking about. You know, we're talking about creating content, and it's something I want to do. I just have to get to the point where I can put together enough of a program that makes sense, in other words, and to have that content where you could watch it and it would make sense, and then there would be something else for you to watch after that. So after you kind of mastered that technique, you can move into the next steps. So yeah, I think that would be something important to do for me.
Well, I know we warned everybody at the beginning that this was going to be rabbit trails, all right?
That's all you're thinking about. I can tell.
Yeah, I
can hear the music.
I'm just waiting for a pause.
Yeah,
no,
steel guitar is playing.
My thought is,
and yours.
My thought is, I don't want to go too far down the path of after Weldon's learned and where he's in his career now without going back. We've already talked about his dad. So, when did your dad have to learn firearms engraving from his uncle, and why did he? We're talking before that. Like what things happened in his life that made him like, you know what, I'm gonna
Hank Williams. Hank Williams. Is that?
Well, okay. So my dad was always an artist, I guess, and you know, it is hard.
Not, I guess. No, he's 100% an artist.
Yeah, for sure. And so he was making stuff. He tooled leather. He you know, made saddles and belts and all kinds of stuff like that. So he was a very creative person, in addition to learning how to play the guitar and sing. And so in the 40s, I believe, is when my uncle, or my dad's uncle, showed him the process of engraving. So he had that skill set that he was kind of working with. And so he would use that and do that. But then his love at that time was playing country music. And so we're talking his first radio appearance was in 1938, which, you know, is going to be 100 years ago pretty soon, you know. But so he was on the radio, and he started playing gigs and doing stuff, and really developing that side of his career. And he saw it as a business, as a job. It's what he wanted to do for a living. And so that's what he did. At the same time, you don't play gigs all day, every day. And so he used his downtime to tool leather, to, he would go hunting and fishing and doing stuff like that as well. But he developed this sort of multifaceted skill set. And I don't know how far down this rabbit trail you want me to go, but
let's go down the trail.
What kind of bands was he play? Did he ever play with like any cool bands?
He was
or anything like that?
All right, he was in San Antonio. So he was in San Antonio, Texas, which maybe not the best country music town, but in the day that he was there, radio did a lot of live broadcasts. And so my dad was a disc jockey on several of the radio stations, but what that meant was that he was doing live shows. So he'd be playing his guitar and singing, and there were some records that he would play. And, so because of that medium, he was broadcast all over Texas, where anybody could hear that station. And, in fact, he was actually on some of the Mexican stations that were across the border that were 1,000,000 watt, that you could hear literally on the fence wire on the border. Those stations were beaming. Wolfman Jack was on ones, like that. XEG is one. And dude, they broadcast North America. I mean, it covered North America. When you hit AM radio with 1,000,000 watts, it's like nitrous oxide on one of your cars, right? It's like it makes stuff happen. And so he was getting pretty well known. At the same time, if any country music stars came through San Antonio to play, if you had the hottest radio show, they want to be on your show. So he got to know everybody in the business. And in probably 49, he started telling my mother, they were married in 1941. July of 1941, right before the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, in fact. So they got married in July. That happened December 7th. So they had a small window of peace in their life. And then, so about 49, he told my mother, hey, I've gotten as big as I can get in this market. If I want to do this, I'm going to have to go to Nashville, because that's where it's happening. And they thought about it. And finally, I think around 1950, they closed their house up, loaded everything in the car, and went to Nashville. And he wasn't invited by anybody. He just decided to go. He had a couple of friends that had gone from San Antonio there. So he had a buddy that had a cabin on the Cumberland River. And so they went and they got in, this guy's name was Joe. They got in Joe's cabin, and the next day it snowed more than it has snowed in Tennessee, probably up until that point. They were stuck in a cabin on the Cumberland River, he and my mother.
I bet your mom was happy. Well,
they stayed married, so and it's a wonder I wasn't born in 1951 after that story, but I wasn't. Anyway, he hung around, went, got an appointment at every record company, went to the Grand Ole Opry, and so the story was when he went to the Opry, the guy said, "Man, Bill, I really love you. Do you have a recording contract?" And he said, "Well, no, I don't." He said, "Well, I can't let you on the Opry unless you got a recording contract." And he goes, "Okay, well, let me see what I can do." And so then he goes to all the record companies, and it's, "Well, are you on the Opry?" "Well, no, but if I could get a recording contract," I mean, "Well, if you were on the Opry, we'd give you a recording contract." So he's like, "Well, all right, let's see what happens here, right?" So Tex Ritter came into town. He had been out on tour, and he came into town, and Dad called him, and Tex says, "Well, did you talk to D. Kilpatrick over at Capitol Records?" And Dad said, "Yeah, but he turned me down." He said, "I tell you what, I want you to meet me over there at whatever time, just be there." Dad, all right. So Dad got there. Tex walks in, and he tells the guy behind the desk, he says, "Get a contract out and sign this boy right now." And the guy pulls the drawer open, gets a contract out, and boom, he's got a recording contract on Capitol Records. So he's like, Yes.
Capitol
So
Records.
he calls Jim Denny at the Opry. He says, "Hey, Jim, I need to come see you." And all right. So he walks in. He says, "What's up, Bill?" He says, "Well, I got a recording contract on Capitol Records. I just want to see if you're a man of your word." He says, "Hang on just a second. I got to make a phone call." So he turns around. He gets on the phone. Blah, blah, blah. Hangs up. He says, "Bill, how'd you like to open up on the road for Hank Williams?" And Dad says, "Well, if Hank would have me, that'd be fabulous." And he says, "Yep." He said, "You're going to be his opening act. And I'll put you on the Opry. I can't make you a member right now, but you'll be on the Opry every Friday or Saturday night, whatever it was. And you'll be traveling out of Nashville as the opening act for Hank Williams." And I was like, man, this is awesome. So in about 21 days, my dad went from local San Antonio hillbilly to now I'm in Nashville. So it's like, and at that time, this was about the second generation of actual country music in 1950, because there had been some guys who had done pretty well and been stars. And so this, what we're talking about when he was there, was almost the seminal time of country music.
Everything was on a rocket ship. Yeah.
It was all right there. And so, I mean, you had Ernest Tubb, you had little Jimmy Dickens, anybody that you can think of from that era. They were working out of the Opry and they were traveling on these shows and doing that. And
wasn't Bob Wills the king though back in Texas?
Bob Wills was
still the king.
Yeah. Bob Wills is still the king. So that's what he did. And so he would record for Capitol, and Capitol made him, his first recording session was prior to him traveling with Hank. And so the music on the first 4 songs that he did is a little different. After that, he used Hank's band, which was called the Drifting Cowboys, the steel, the fiddle, guitar, and bass, to back him up, because it made sense. I'm going to be out on the road with him. And so I want my records to sound like what people hear when they're, buying stuff. And Capitol would have him cut, they would do 4, it's called sides. At the time, they were cut on an acetate disc, which looks like an old 78 record, but it's just thicker. And so they would record on those front and back, and they would do 2 of those. So there'd be 4 songs. One of those had to be a beer drinking song, and which is pretty funny because my dad was Baptist and never drank beer. But, hey, this was his job and he was working.
The Baptists, they drink beer. They just do it on Saturdays.
You're right. Or that they do in the closet, maybe, just hypothetically speaking. But it, gosh, you derail my train.
Sorry.
It's all good.
Beer drinking song.
Yeah, beer drinking song. They wouldn't play them on the Opry. You couldn't do a beer drinking song on the Grand Ole Opry or on the radio. So they played them on jukeboxes all over the place. And so jukebox money was big time then. And so he and Hank and the group were coming in off the road on one of their trips. They would be gone for a couple of weeks at a time and then come back in. And when they came in, they would have a recording session. And so, excuse me, on this particular one, Dad tells Hank, hey, man, I need a beer drinking song. I got a session coming up and I don't have one. And so he said, Hank said, Hoss, I got one that'll cock your pistol. Don't worry. And so the night before my dad's session, Hank goes in the studio, which was it was called Castle Studios. It was some hotel there in Nashville. It was the recording studio, right? And this is before Studio A and B, RCA Studios and all that's before that ever happened. And so Hank goes in, does his session for MGM, and then tells the band, hey, y'all can go. I need the engineer to stay because I got to cut a demo. And so the engineer stuck around. Hank recorded his demo record, and Dad was there. And he said, here you go, Bill. Gave Dad the record, and Dad went home and learned it. And the reason for that, neither Hank nor my dad read music. They played by ear totally. It wasn't like he would write it out. Dad would, it's like, nah, these are hillbillies, right? They're really good at what they do, but this is how they do it. So Dad goes home and learned it and comes back to the studio the next night and he records it. And then he takes that demo record and puts it in a box with a bunch of other demo records and stuff, and just forgot about it and went on about his business, and back to touring and doing all that kind of stuff. And eventually, Hank started having more problems in his personal life that affected his business and stuff. And so Dad left Hank and went with other stars out of Grand Ole Opry. And Hank's life kind of came unraveled. And in January 1 of 53, he passed away. And so I think Dad was actually in San Antonio when Hank died. And it just took a lot out of my dad. And when they were friends, they were very, very good friends. And I think it hurt him deeply. And anyway, so Hank died. Dad, went on with his career. And toward the latter part of the 50s, rockabilly music was coming on strong with guys like Elvis, Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, those kind of guys. Excuse me. And so it was putting the hurt on the hillbillies, because all the young kids had been their fan base all this time. And now you got kids wanting to hear these guys. And if you're hardcore traditional country music, they don't want to listen to you. And so at that point, my dad had been on the road for 20 years. Later, after my mom died, I found out, he said, I was going to lose your mom. She had just had enough. I've been doing this for 20 years. And she was just tired. And I loved your mom more than I love music. And he said, so I just came in off the road. I quit. And then he started really focusing on those skills that he had been developing all this other time, engraving, doing some leather work. It took him a while to kind of find out where his niche was, which was in engraving guns. And he eventually did. But to go back to that box of demo records, right? It stayed in their garage in San Antonio, little detached garage that they had. And then they moved to Bernie, Texas. And while they were building their house, it was actually under a tarp in the backyard, along with a bunch of other stuff. Then it moved to the attic where it stayed. In 1988, I think it was, he and my mother decided, it was probably my mother, decided to clean out the attic. Only your wife would decide to clean the attic out.
Exactly. Yeah, it had to be her.
I am happy with whatever is in my attic right now.
Stay there till you die.
You can be there.
On the other hand, my wife, it's something that she's going to wake up at night going, we need to clean out the attic. Yeah. And so my mom, and if she watches this, I'm kidding. Right? So, she decided they need to clean the attic out. So they go in through this stuff and find this box. And my mother says, what is this? And my dad said, I'll just throw that out. It's a bunch of junk. She said, well, let's listen to some of these. And they started listening. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon. No grandkids were there. My wife and I had 4, and they were little at the time. And nobody was there. So they just started spinning these old records, going down memory lane. Well, they come up to this one. And my dad says, I have never heard that song by Hank Williams ever released. And they have repackaged and released everything that he's ever done. And he goes, this might be the only one. Wow. And Junior needs to know about this. And
damn.
So he starts
giving me chills. He really is giving me chills.
Yeah. So he, little pause there. I came home probably 1973 from school, and Hank Jr. sitting on the couch talking to my dad. And Dad says, oh, son, this is Hank Williams Jr. And I said, oh, normal. That's cool. What do we got? Is there a pizza or whatever? And I'm going to ride my motorcycle. And I'm like, hey, Hank, how's it going? Okay. All right, cool. Bye. And I'm out of there because, I don't know, it wasn't a big deal. I mean, he knew everybody. And it was just much more impressed by Hank Jr. now than I was when I was that age.
Well, short pause. I'm from Alabama. My family, wife, my grandparents, all from Alabama for generations. So in Alabama, if you're from Alabama, the Williams family can do no wrong, right?
Yeah.
They're the first family of Alabama. So
it doesn't matter. We're from
absolutely
the Chicagoland area, and ever since I was in my teens, I loved Hank Sr., Hank Jr., Hank the Third. I'm a Williams family fan.
Yeah. So
named his dog Hank.
Hey, yeah, that's right. I'm in good company then.
Yeah. All right, good.
So actually, this was right before Hank fell off of Ajax Mountain. And so he was there, and he knew that my dad and his dad were pretty close. And he said, Bill, they want me to be my dad.
Huh.
He said, what do you think my dad would tell me to do? He said, son, I can tell you what your daddy would say. The world's already had one Hank Williams. They don't need another one. You be you.
Damn.
He said, okay. He said, I know your daddy would tell you that.
Holy.
Be who you are. You don't need to be your daddy. So, he goes on and, gets pretty bunged up, falling down the mountain. And then he
changes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so then the Hank Jr. that we know and love is kind of born out of that. And so that's pretty awesome. But I saw him first at my house before then. And that's when I first met Hank. So Dad says, man, he goes, Junior needs this. And so Dad starts trying to call. He calls the front office and gets the runaround. And I'm sure whoever answered the phone is going,
I'm sure.
How nice. Well, isn't that special? Really? Goodbye.
A record.
You don't ever get the message. And it finally pissed him off. And he said, you know what? If Junior wants that damn thing, he's going to have to come down here and get it because I'm done trying to give it to him. It just kind of,
right.
That's how he was. He said, okay, I'm done. Well, you talk about getting goosebumps. The phone rings one day and it's Hank Jr. And he says, hey, I want to talk to Weldon. And so I get on the phone. He says, hey, I know you've been engraving for a while, and I've got a bunch of your dad's work in my collection, and I would like to add some pieces of yours to go along with those. And if it's okay, after we're done in San Antonio Friday night, on Saturday, we'll run out and visit if it's okay. And I'm like, well, let me check my schedule.
Pretty busy on Saturday.
Yeah, I could probably squeeze you in.
I don't know, Hank. No, we're like, yeah, absolutely, come out and we'll enjoy visiting. And so we did. We talked about guns and hog hunting and whatever else we were, chewing the fat on, just having a good time. And my mom made these little dessert things she called chipperoos, and so they come in. He had Merle Kilgore, his manager, with him, and there was another guy whose name I can't recall that was with him too, one of Hank's friends. And so they're just hanging out, having fun, eating my mother's chipperoos and just enjoying life. And my dad says, hey, I want y'all to listen to something. And they're like, okay, Bill, what is it? So he goes in my old room on my old stereo from high school, and he plunks down this record and he started playing it. And their eyes bug out of their head. And Kilgore says, Bill, take the needle off, and for God's sakes, don't scratch it. So Dad takes the needle off and takes the record out, puts it back in the sleeve, paper sleeve that it was in. And Hank says, Bill, what are you going to do with that? And my dad said, son, your daddy gave this to me a long time ago. I think this belongs to you. And he just handed it to me. Holy shit. And so wow. The record was, it was a demo record of There's a Tear in My Beer. And the rest, as they say,
is history.
Yeah, is history. And boy, what a history. And so Dad just gave it to him. And so, of course, they had seen the song in Hank's catalog of music, had seen it in print. They did not even know that Hank ever recorded it. My dad recorded it and released it on Capitol. Like we said, he was in the studio the night after, and it was released on Capitol. So Dad's version was out there. They had no idea Hank did a demo. And so they took it, put the duet together, and it just was a monster. Well, Merle Kilgore went on Nashville Now, which was the biggest country music TV show at the time. And he starts telling the story because people want to know where it came from. Where in the world did this new Hank Williams record come from? He says, well, there's this Hank's old, front man, Big Bill Lister from Bernie, Texas, had this thing in his attic and blah, blah. Well, dude, the next morning the phone started ringing. And it's like, hey, come be on the radio and tell us about this story, blah, blah, blah. And one of the guys that we met doing that is Bill Cody. And Bill Cody is at WSM in Nashville and still a friend, and used to live in Comfort, not too far from us. But Bill's a super guy. And man, the phone started ringing, and it didn't stop until after my dad died. People hungry to hear about his experience with Hank, what kind of person Hank was, what he knew, blah, blah, blah. And he did not mind sharing that. I asked him finally one day after all that, it was like pretty crazy for a while. And we were sitting there eating, like, cause we're still working, he and I were working together at the time. And I worked in his shop for 26 years. And so I spent a lot of time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so at lunch one day, I said, Dad, I just got to ask you, anybody else, when Hank said, Bill, what are you going to do with that? They would have said, well, it could be yours for,
$10 million.
Yeah. They would have named a price, whatever it was. And I said, I'm sure they would have paid it, because good God, a one of a kind Hank Williams new song.
Unreal.
I said, why'd you do that? And I already knew, but I just wanted to hear him say it. And he said, son, I just wanted Hank's old fans to get to hear one more new Hank Williams song. That's all I wanted.
Wow.
I said, Dad, there ain't nobody in the world like you. And
damn.
Anyway, about a month later, they sent him a contract, and they gave him a percentage actually of the sales, which they didn't have to do. He didn't ask for it, but
wow,
they took care of him.
That is pretty cool.
Hey everyone, Andy Stumpf here, the host of the Ironclad original Change Agents podcast. In addition to producing podcasts like Change Agents, Danger Close with Jack Carr, Oil and Whiskey with Roadster Shop, and others, Ironclad also works with some of the world's biggest brands like Mechanics Wear, Under Armour, the Navy SEAL Foundation, Anthem, and a ton of others to create industry-leading custom film series, commercials, podcasts, and more. We can also get your message in front of an audience of millions by placing it on podcasts and series just like this one. To check out more about Ironclad and see how they can help you elevate your company, brand, or business, check out thisisironclad.com. Thisisironclad.com.
Have you heard the Hank Jr. song, Hand Me Down?
Hand Me Down.
Where he's talking about a note he found in Senior's guitar case. He says in an attic. It almost sounds like, I don't feel like he found, he's talking about hand me down, son, my son to your son. You take all these songs and it just goes on and on and on about telling him to like hang it up. But if you listen to the lyrics, it sounds to me like, I don't think he found a note in Senior's guitar case. It almost sounds like this was written about this story. Listen to the song, Hand Me Down. It is a great song. I love the song. But
I haven't heard that one, but Hank Jr. is a really good songwriter, and so he's got some powerful songs, and I have to listen to it and see. Kind of depends on when it was written too. Might have been written before this happened, so. But I don't
crazy.
know.
Yeah. It sounds like later Hank. I don't know the exact date, but yeah, it sounds, because I love Hank Jr.'s early years where they wanted him to be his dad, right? Because he's a wildly talented guy. But then, and I actually just bought 2 records last weekend at some random little record store out in Louisville, Kentucky. Because I dig his early stuff, right? Mm. But I love when he reached that point, like you're describing, when it came time for him to be Hank Jr.
Yeah.
And it's kind of mind blowing because you're like, man, he's probably better than the old man. I hate to say it, but what he did, I mean, he is a talented guy.
Oh, good grief. The hits.
But man, I tell you, just unreal.
He is very, very talented. Very talented. And awesome. Senior, I think, would be very proud of him. And I think I can say that based upon what I know from my dad. I believe he would be very, very proud of what Hank Jr.'s done with what he's been given. So.
I think after this, we're probably going to have to hang this podcast up because we've had some pretty cool dudes.
There's nothing ever gets better than this.
We've had some really cool dudes.
Nothing gets better.
We had Joe Rogan on here.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan podcast. And sorry, Joe. Joe's super cool dude.
He didn't have these stories.
That doesn't hold a candle.
Joe's super cool, but he didn't have these stories.
Right. But he's not Hank. He's not Hank Senior cool.
No, he didn't walk in and say hey to Hank Jr. while I'm looking for pizza or something to eat.
Unreal.
I didn't know any better. I spent all day at school suffering trying to let him teach.
Man, that is absolutely awesome. I knew a little bit about the stuff, but hearing it being told, honestly, like chills, absolute chills.
I think, something is supposed to happen. I believe that was just it just had to happen. It was supposed to, because the odds of that record surviving what it went through. And I kind of made a point of telling you where it was.
Yep.
What it went. So, dude, in the attic in Texas in the summer, it's probably 140, 150 degrees in that attic. And that record looked like it was new. It showed no damage on that side. The other side, the song was almost intact. I think they lost a little bit of it, but on the Tear in My Beer side, man, it was perfect.
When did Junior release that with the video and all that? Was that 84 or 85?
89. It was in 89. Yeah.
That late. Okay.
So, so I think he came in 88 maybe, and that's when Dad gave it to him. And so the funniest part was, I think they went directly to San Antonio, found a recording studio, and recorded it, because they realized what they had, and it's like, man, if it gets damaged, it's over. It's done. And so they go to a recording studio. Then Warner Brothers sends a dude with an environmentally controlled briefcase to put the record in. They send him on airplane.
Sat in the damn attic.
It was under a tarp. It was under a tarp.
They head into your attic and capture that air.
So hard. He goes, oh my gosh. He goes, the damn thing's been in the attic. It's been in the backyard. It's been in the garage. He goes, good grief. But anyway, hey, they were doing due diligence to make sure nothing happened to the thing. And
I was living in Dallas, Texas, from 87 to 90, and I remember, or 86 to 90, and I remember on Sundays after church, me and the family my dad would always take us to this one barbecue joint, and I don't remember the name of it, in Dallas and stuff. And I remember, like, that was the song that was always playing at that time. So it was maybe towards the end, 89 or 90 or whatever. And that was just, I remember my dad always trying to tell, and I'm young then. I'm probably 9 or 10, and but I remember it plays over and over in my head.
It's crazy when it hits you. For me, the first Hank Sr. song I heard was in the movie Radio Flyer. Yeah. You remember that? The old man who was like beating up the kids.
Yeah, I remember.
He'd walk into the backyard and grab a 6-pack of beer and sit down, and on the turntable,
you hear that?
Yeah, it was a Hank Sr. song, and I was a little kid, but something about it just resonated with me and stuck.
They actually used "Tear in My Beer" in a Clint Eastwood movie in Pink Cadillac. It's in the movie Pink Cadillac. It's playing
Pink Cadillac.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know how we transition from this, but I wanted to get back to so. You've learned
just like this.
Start over.
Just like I can't.
This is like part 2. All right, we're starting now. But we'll just talk forever. So anyway, you're learning from your dad. You said you worked in there 26 years. That's absolutely amazing. To be able to work with him for that long, side by side, doing some crazy stuff. You talked about him teaching you. You did very early on. You were doing a gun. When did you start making your name? When did you start making?
When did you Hank Jr. You're Hank Sr.?
Yeah, when did you Hank Jr.?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not sure I've thought a whole lot about that, but I think I would go back to into the 90s, I guess, and with my dad watching what I was doing, and I think he had a sense of maybe what I was capable of, but the commissions that I had coming in weren't supporting what my ultimate capabilities were. And so I had a family. I was working 2 jobs. I had another job that we can discuss at some point if you want, but I had, in my time off from that, I was engraving full time. So I had these dueling careers. I was a professional firefighter in San Antonio for 30 years. And
wow.
Yeah, I picked a job.
This is the most interesting man in the world.
By far.
So
do you drink Dos Equis?
Well, anyway, my criteria was pretty simple. We were expecting a child, and I had been freelance engraving, and And like they say, it's sometimes chicken and sometimes feathers. And so I thought, well, I don't know. I had this real feeling of responsibility, going to be a dad and all. And I thought, this is really not a good life, to try to raise a kid or have a family, because I don't know sometimes if I'm going to make any money. And it seems that we're going to need a lot of it. And, it would seem as though. And so I thought, okay, I need a job that's got a lot of time off, because I really want to do this. But I need a job that's got a lot of time off, a lot of benefits, insurance, and a retirement. And so what is that job? And so that eliminated almost all jobs. And what was left was being a firefighter. And my dad had some friends that were firefighters, so I kind of grew up knowing those guys. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to see if I can do that. And eventually I did. And went to work for a small department for a couple of years, and then segued into city of San Antonio, where I stayed 27 years. And but the motivation for that was what I just said. I needed a career that would do those things, and it allowed me the time off. I actually worked on duty a long time. I had a little shop set up in the back of the fire station when I would go to work. And seriously, now you can't do this now.
Right.
Double dipping.
Don't try this at home. This is years ago.
Did that pair of Colts get engraved at a fire station?
No, it did not.
All right. Then it wouldn't matter what I'm finding them, and
yeah. So what would happen? It eventually came out. I set up this little shop in the back, and when we went on duty, I'd go, get all my stuff out, and what are we doing today? I would ask, the lieutenant, what are we doing? Nothing. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go engrave. So we changed at noon. I'd eat lunch and then go back to my little engraving shop and engrave for 24 hours sometimes. I mean, man, I'd work until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and back when I could do that kind of thing. And the word got out. And so every now and then the PA would come on. Hey, Lister, come up to the front. And I'd go up there, and it was some battalion chief from somewhere. Hey, Captain so-and-so over here is retiring, and the boys want to do a knife for him. And, spend about $50. When you're done, just let 40 know, and he'll come pick it up. And so
you're paying your dues.
Yeah. Chain of command is actually delivering my word for me. Bring the money. Here's the thing.
We're gonna let you keep doing that, but here's some stuff you need to do.
Yeah, right. And so it worked out pretty well. Probably wouldn't work now, but in that day and time. But in that day and time, it did. And man, I sidetracked so far. I don't know what the real question was, but okay, I know what it was. It was, so when did I become me and not my dad? And so I'll throw this out there. Some people ask me this, and I always marvel at this question. But who is better, you or your dad? I'm like, well, first of all, I'm thinking, what kind of question is that?
Obviously me.
That's a really bad question.
No, it is. And I always say, you know what? My dad was an amazing engraver. And if I could be as creative and awesome as my dad, I would feel like I was doing something. And that's the truth. And that usually they go, oh, okay. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you, dude, I am so good that I'm way better. Please just shut up. Anyway, so dad saw what I was doing, and he saw the potential. And he's like, man, he goes, you got to do some of these guns. He goes, I know you can do it. You know you can do it. But until you do one, the people who are going to pay you aren't going to know. So you need to do some of this kind of stuff. So he actually commissioned me to create some pieces that would push the envelope and push me outside of where I had been with just, scroll work. So these are guns with animals on them and scenes and all kinds of, wild stuff. And what he wanted to do, he was actually investing in me. And he knew that I wouldn't be able to do that right now. But if the world never saw one, the world was never going to ask for one. And so I appreciate that so much about my dad. We all need somebody who believes in us. You got to believe in yourself, but it's awesome when somebody believes in you. And sometimes they see things in you that you may not yet see. And they call it out and they say, I know you're better. You can do better and you can be better. You just got to do it. And that's not a derogatory thing, but it's like, man, I see this and I know you can get there. And so my dad did that. And so I did some pieces like that. And then, the word got out. And then I got to be able to do more of those things and more of those things. And then at that point, I start getting to kind of do what I want to do and then create the things that I want to create. And so when you're working for on a commission, when somebody comes to you to build a car, I'm sure you've had all different kind of clients, and then you've probably really liked the ones who go, man, I got a budget, I kind of got an idea, but I'm looking to you guys to sort of do it. And those are great people to work for because they let you be creative and they let you do what you love to do. And they're usually stoked whenever they see the finished product. When you got somebody who's so technical and it's got to have this, it's got to have that, it's got to have,
or they've printed out a picture and they say, trace this. I want you to engrave this on my gun. No thanks.
No, that's a no.
Yeah, that's a no. Exactly.
Well, I've had people show me photos of other engravers whom I know, and I want a gun like this. I'm like, well, that's done by so and so. You need to go talk to him,
right? Because
I'm not going to create a gun like that. That's his deal,
right?
Not mine. So go talk to him.
We have this conversation on this podcast and in the shop all the time. It's funny. You have people come, man, love, big fan of the Roadster Shop. Love you guys' work. Love this, blah, blah. I want a car like this.
Yeah.
And it'll be
here's
like
some pictures of
a Ring Brothers or whatever. It's like, well, that's what they built and stuff.
Call the Ring Brothers. Right. They'll build you
it's your competition.
Car, just like
that. They want you to build one that your competition builds or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, no, can't do that.
That's a great point though. The greatest things we've ever built, the things we're the most passionate about were the customers that came in with just an idea for an old car. And what are you guys thinking? I mean, what would you like to do? Make it cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a guy that there's two guys involved in this story. One of them I called the Gopher. And so the Gopher's job, he worked for a very wealthy attorney. And so the Gopher's job was to find guns. He would go for guns, right? So he was the Gopher. He went all across the country finding. Yeah, I know, man. It's like, dude, he rode his Harley to Sturgis one time and had the Dakota built. Okay. And shot it and then had him take it apart and send it to me for engraving. And, I would actually let you pour me one right now if I was there. I would love to. So the Gopher would bring guns and say, hey, the guy's name was Mike. And he said, Mike wants this or Mike wants that or blah, blah, blah. And the projects kept getting more and more involved, right? So then he shows up one day with a couple of Colts that were factory engraved. Mike doesn't like these and he wants you to fix them. I said, so these are factory engraved, just like a faux pas to do that, blah, blah, blah. He said he knows that. He wants you to fix them. So me being a little slow, right? I'm not the sharpest tool in shed. I'm in the shed, but I said,
I'm in the shed.
In the shed. So I'm like, but to do that, you have to do blah, blah, blah. And I explained the process. Yes, but Mike doesn't like them. He wants you to fix them. I said, it's going to be very expensive. It would be less expensive just to take two plain guns. Mike doesn't like them. He wants you to fix them. I said, oh. I'm like, the light bulb finally went on. Though, like there's some really bad wiring. And then ding, Mike wants me to fix those. He says, yes. I said, okay, got it. And so those were two very elaborate projects. One of them was a 9mm factory chambered single action. That's been done on about 50 guns that I know of. And so it's not a standard thing that you could get that I know of. And the only commemorative it was on was called the European, and it had some really big European style engraving on it. And so I had to get rid of all that. And that involved a lot of process to do. When we got done with that, then he comes back with this gun and he says, it's a single action. And he says, okay, here's the deal. Mike wants you to make this so nice that you don't want to let go of it. I'm like, okay, so what's he thinking? It's your deal. You make it so nice that you don't want to let go of it. No budget was discussed. Okay. And so at this point, we were years into our relationship. I had never met the guy. I only knew the gopher. For all I knew, the gopher was Mike. I mean, I didn't. And
that's a daunting task, though. Unlimited.
You need some direction.
So,
you gotta have
some
right?
borders.
Yeah, you need a cap.
So
Just how many
budget.
zeros? At least give me a number of zeros.
So it'd be like me coming to you and go, okay, how much? Here's a check. Okay, get to work.
Right.
And that's it. You make it so nice you don't want to let go of it. And so I struggled with that for a little bit because I thought, okay, I got to have a theme. And then between my wife and I, I'd bounce stuff off of her and, what was about this idea? What about that? And I developed or settled on Indians and buffalo. And so I used scenes from Western art. Remington Russell, Frank McCarty's a more modern painter. But I would take adaptations of their buffalo hunt scenes with Indians that I liked and sort of modify them to fit on what I was doing. And so there was one other artist named Henry Merwin Schrady that I also used. So 4 artists. And you know what they say. I mean, good artists borrow, great artists steal. So I just stole their art. I was inspired by the Western art of these guys and then adapted their scenes to fit on what I was doing. And so I did the single action that had multi-level raised and relief gold Indian and buffalo scenes on it, sculpted engraving. I mean, it was like me going, man, this is everything I can do. At that point in time, it was like the pinnacle of what I was capable of. I mean, I did everything I knew how to do. And so I got to meet Mike. I delivered the gun in person. And everybody that saw that gun before that, their first thing out of their mouth was, wow. Is they would look at it and go, wow. And when you hear that, you think, okay, I achieved something. As I invoked a reaction. People like what they're seeing, but they're not writing the check. Mike is, So I got to see what Mike says. So Mike says, I meet him. He's a really great guy. Love the gun. Wow. And his wife happened to be walking by. Hey, honey, come here. I want you to meet Weldon. He's been engraving guns for me, and he just did this piece. I would like you to look at it. She takes it and she goes, wow. Because I had just told Mike, I said, man, everybody has said wow. And like it was scripted, she comes in, wow. And so the worst part of it was I didn't realize how literal he meant. Make it so nice that you don't want to let it go. And he had, later on, I learned that he had done that with a number of people that he had patronized with their art. One person said, I don't want to let that go. And he said, okay, keep it. And I did not realize that's how literal he was. Had I realized it, I would have said, dude, I don't want to let this go. Okay, it's really done. I'll just keep it. Anyway, it went into his collection. Unfortunately, Mike passed away a couple of years after that. And but it is still in his wife sold a bunch of his stuff. She kept everything I did, and that gun is still in her possession.
Wow.
So that's incredible.
So that was a long answer to your question. When did I get to become me? And I had the opportunity to become me because my dad encouraging me to do that, and then wanting to. I think in order to get good at anything, we have to try, and that drive comes from within us, right? You have to want it. And if you want to be good at what you do, you want to be great at what you do, you don't sit there wanting, you do. And you keep doing, and you don't quit until you get better. And then you keep trying to get better. And I still learn stuff, and I'm not as good as I could be. I don't think if I ever get where I think I'm as good as I'm going to get, I ought to quit, because why? I mean, look, every time you pick up that chisel, you have to make that chisel do what you want it to. And so when you look at my work, what you see is a recording in steel of how good I was that day, right then at that second, because it doesn't matter all the stuff I've done up to that. The 44 years that I've worked at that make no difference on how that recording looks. It's got to be that recording that's good. You understand what I mean?
I do.
It captures, yeah. And so if I'm not on my A game, and if I'm not doing my best, I mean, it's going to suck.
I understand that completely, and you hear that a lot, right? That's the common thing to say. And I say it, a lot of guys in the hot rod industry say it, is that when you stop learning, like, it's time to hang it up.
Yeah.
I think you're a rare exception to that like you truly are the best. Like what you've mastered your craft. You know, like there's nobody that I know in like the car building, metal shaping. You know, Troy's probably as close as it gets to being like.
I wish he probably should hang it up. He's not going to learn
to
anything
truly
else.
say that they've mastered a craft, and I get it. I mean, there's always a next step, but man, from the outside looking in, that is the
hats off to
artistry.
you
It
for
is
sure.
Unbelievable.
Well, I think you're talking to Josh about that.
No, I don't
be the
speak.
polar opposite.
I don't speak.
He just doesn't
Josh
say
at
any
all.
nice things to me whatsoever.
I'd have told Josh to hang it up years ago for different reasons. Not
Okay. Yeah, because as I was listening to that, I was thinking, wow, Josh is really good then.
no, not at all. No. Yeah.
And no, listen, I appreciate that, but dude, there are people that are way, way, way better than me, and my hat's off to them. I look up to them and admire. I study engraving, a lot of engraving, from the old masters that are gone to the current guys that are working now, and I see stuff now that just is extremely inspiring. And so,
inspiring is great. Inspiring is one thing. That inspiring, but at the same time, you can't like quantify the greatness of the art of engraving, just like you can't quantify the greatness of the art of anything. You know, it's not like why is somebody the best painter of, you know, whatever? It's because it maybe evoked the most emotion from a broader range of people, or what? Like, you have your style, other engravers have their style. We started this podcast off talking about, and I told you, your style is my favorite. His style is your favorite, right? We love that style. You have mastered your art, and that is the art of Weldon Lister and your style of engraving. So could you lay out every engraver's works of art and measure with a microscope, you know, the lines and the radiuses and the curvatures and come up with the guy that made the least amount of mistakes? But who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. You know, I think it's, you know, there's Baskin Robbins has how many flavors of ice cream, you know, because you know, there are a lot of people who like a lot of different things, but I appreciate you guys for liking what I do. I really do. And I don't know, I'm almost at a loss for words. I don't know exactly what to say, because it's like, you know, we all want to be good at something, I guess, that's within us. We want to feel like we're making a difference in doing something. And so in my instance, I guess it's making a difference on a real small scale of minutia, but it's a skill set that people admire and they like. And some people love what I do. Some people could care less. And that's among people who engrave. And so, but what I have been able to do is make an identifiable style in that regard. Yep. And good, bad, or ugly, here it is.
Well, it's interesting, and we'll get into our standard questions, because I know we got to be respectful of this time. But it's interesting when you said something about it doesn't matter how bad you want it, you've got to do, right? And you hear it so many times from great athletes or motivational speakers. You know, how I made it, blah blah. I just wanted it more than anybody else. I just wanted it more. I just wanted it. But that want, they worked harder because they wanted it more, right? The wishing and the wanting doesn't really do anything, except it can be your fuel for pushing through those late nights or the 24 hours straight or doing whatever you've got to do. But the wanting in and of itself, it doesn't matter how bad you want it. You could really, there's so many things I really, really, really want. But if I don't do anything about it, ain't nothing going to happen, right? And pardon my French, but that's my granddad saying all the time. You can shit in one hand and wish in the other and see which one fills up better, you know, faster. And that's the case. You could wish all night long about something, if you don't ever do anything, if you don't take the first step and then the second step and the third step, and then utilize that full tank of wish to when you take the fourth or fifth step, and you're like, oh man, this is hard. Yep. Like this sucks. Then go back to that wish tank and you're like, oh, remember, I really, really, really want it. All right, then take the next step and take the next step. It's interesting. Like you talked about, is the want doesn't mean anything. It's the do.
Yeah, that's it. And it sounds kind of Yoda-ish, right? It's not the want, it's the do. But it is true, and it's about perseverance. It's about drive and desire and sticking with something. And those words can apply to anything, whether you're learning the cello in an orchestra or play in a sport. What you see, and like I was saying earlier, you see the result, the recording of me that time in my life right then. It's cut in steel. It's like a record that's cut in steel. You see that. And that is the result of
the failures
of practice. Yeah. Of the working past the suck point, because man, it sucks sometimes. And so later on, as I began to sculpt faces and animals and stuff like that, my dad would say, look, because I would get somewhere, I'm like, God, this looks like shit, excuse me. He says, son, you got to work past that point. He said, they all do, but that's the steps on the way to getting it finished. Yep. You don't quit there. You keep going, because it's real discouraging after you've worked hours and hours and hours, and you look at it and you're going like, oh my, it's getting worse. It's not getting, it doesn't look like an elephant. It looks like, I don't know what, but
right.
Anyway, so his point was valid. You keep pushing through and you keep on working, and you must understand. And so, hey, a lot of times it's a reflection of what our lives are like. Sometimes our lives look really bad and it's crap, but if you keep pushing through and you keep working, you get on the other side of that. And then you reap the reward and the harvest of all those hard times that you go through. It's like initially we were talking about the lion with all the scars. Well, took some fighting to get on the other side of that, and he's carrying the scars, but he's where he's at because of that. So yeah, that's my philosophical load of BS for the day. So
that is some solid information right there. I mean, that's what people remember.
Well, now we reach the time where we ask the standard questions we ask every single guest. So, best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I've ever received. Apparently I listen pretty closely because it sticks out. No. Do your best, I think, is what my dad said. Do your best, no matter what you're doing. Try to do your best. And that doesn't mean, that was the advice, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be the best at everything. But
try to be the best, yeah.
My best, doing my best. And so what I want you to see when you look at my work is my best. I'm not trying to be somebody else. I'm trying to do the best Weldon Lister I can be when I'm engraving.
Well, lucky for you, your best is the best. So that's congratulations there.
And I think throughout this podcast, there will be somebody out there listening, assuming there's people listening.
There's a couple
that will pull something from this podcast that you have said, because it's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
That will use that as their best piece of advice.
There's been about 5 or 10 things you brought up that have been phenomenal piece of advice and just kind of words to live by throughout this whole podcast.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I appreciate
so thank you for that.
Well, absolutely, guys. Y'all are too kind. I did hear that again. I studied with the engraver Winston Churchill, and same name as a British prime minister, but
different
Winston, guy. Yeah, obviously, different guy. Anyway, Winston was a fabulous. There's world class, and then there's like universe class. And I think Winston was probably the in the universe class of engraver, and he just recently passed away. And but I had the opportunity to spend a week with him with a bunch of other guys in the GRS Grandmasters class. one of the things that Winston said stuck out to me, and it was almost identical to what my dad said. And it was, do your best work. It doesn't matter if it's on a very small piece or a super elaborate thing. Always do your best work. Don't do ho-hum work just because it's not a major piece. Always do your best work. And I thought, wow, that's really profound advice, because I think sometimes maybe we think, well, it's not a big deal, so just whatever. That wasn't Winston's attitude. His attitude was, no matter what the size of the thing, you do your best. Always do your best. And that, I think, is advice that we can all live by, because it doesn't matter what we're doing. If we try to do our best at it, hey, I've had clients tell me, look, I know my piece isn't a big thing. And I stop them. I'm like, yes, it is. It is to me. It may not be a super elaborate thing, but it's just as important to me as your other, bigger projects. So don't worry about that. They're valid. They're important.
That's awesome.
So do your best work.
Next up, best car movie and why?
Best car movie. Well,
there's no engraving movies, so we've got to pick a car.
There's gun movies too, but he's a car guy. He's made references. Yeah.
We need to work on that. Really, the no engraving movie thing is kind of just really made me mad.
I apologize, man.
Yeah, there's what the heck?
Yeah, right.
So I'm thinking of one, and I'll tell you in a minute. But I don't know. This is going to sound lame, but Back to the Future, because when this baby hits 88 miles an hour, you're going to see some serious shit.
It's not lame, dude.
This is a second reference. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's solid.
Yeah. Doc.
Yeah. I mean, that made a lot of kids interested in cars, that movie.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for the flux capacitor, the Mr. Fission version of it, so they can throw in some banana peels and garbage and run on it. So
We're getting
I think
close,
it might be better technology than some of the stuff that they've come up with. But yeah, that, and let me think. It's a Clint Eastwood movie. That's a close second. It's the car movie that he did, and boy, I can't think of the name of it.
Gran Torino.
Yes.
Yeah. Great movie.
That
It really wasn't a car movie.
No, but yes, that counts. 100% counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great movie.
When he yanks out those pistols.
Yeah. Nobody plays like, and that movie in particular, and I mean a lot of ones he's done as he's gotten older. It's so funny because it's old Clint Eastwood being an old badass, and that's exactly exactly what he is. It's just him.
It's like timeless badass.
Yeah,
he is awesome.
I mean, you could have
good movie.
You could have done Gran Torino basically as this is what happens as Dirty Harry gets old, and it's just old Dirty Harry living.
Right,
exactly.
That's exactly what it was.
And you're like, he probably
he's retired now.
Yeah, he's retired, Dirty Harry, and he's living by himself.
But still, don't mess with him.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, they shouldn't have. I mean, they kind of learned.
Learn the hard way.
Yeah, great reference.
That is a good one.
Yeah,
and I'm surprised that's the first time that's come up. That's a good pull.
And he does. Honestly, Clint Eastwood movies are not. They don't get their due, because as badass as they are, or whatever, he still will make a grown man just enough to turn away from your wife and be like, it's just allergies.
Yeah.
Like, what is
This is son.
It's just, it's just a little, what are you talking about? It's not on emotions. Go shoot somebody again. Yeah. He does. He's had some sappy ones, man.
I like a Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely. What was the one, I just watched it again for like the 300th time, with Gene Hackman, Unforgiven, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Unforgiven. Yeah, I just watched it again. I'm a sucker for Westerns. I'll watch 2 or 3 Westerns every weekend, just whatever I can find.
The Quick and the Dead.
Oh, The Quick and the Dead, yeah.
Damn.
Tombstone is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Tombstone is...
That's the number one spot.
We probably do Tombstone quotes 3 or 4 times a day, every day, all the time. Tombstone's one of my favorite. I like The Outlaw Josie Wales, though, is probably one of my favorites of all. Outlaw Josie Wales is really, really good. But Unforgiven the other day. Unforgiven is a phenomenal movie.
Yeah.
Him and Morgan Freeman, and they're, again, it's kind of like the old badasses. Like, they're like, oh, we're old. We used to be bad, but I guess we can go show these whippersnappers what it's about.
I think Tombstone and The Quick and the Dead that's the number one
Quick and the Dead's
for me
good.
Forever.
We did I got 2 guns, one for each of your shirt. I'll have to send you guys one. I'll send you one of those shirts. I actually met Bill Paxton at the Alamo, and the History Channel did a series called Texas Rising, and so I did some awards for him. They were like 4 inches in diameter, big giant Texas Ranger badges made out of silver, and so we got invited to the premiere, which was shown. A big part of it was shown at the Alamo.
Wow!
In front of the Alamo, right where it happened, and it was kind of a surreal time because we were watching the Battle of the Alamo on a giant screen, sitting on the ground where it actually happened. And so, man, it was like a mind-blowing time. And after that, they had a big party on the grounds, and got to visit with Bill Paxton for a little bit. And he was super, super nice guy. Left cool. Way too soon. But we actually discussed Tombstone, and he said, actually, when I met him, he knew what I had done because they discussed it when they were giving the presentations out. So he knew who I was. And I said, hey, I just want to tell you something. I said, I want your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. And started laughing. And he goes, beep, you asshole. In his best Arnold thing. And so, man, we started dying laughing. And then we had a really good conversation talking about Tombstone. I said, the reason I brought that reference up is Paxton was in the first Terminator movie. And you may have missed him, but there's a scene where the Terminator comes up to these guys that are horsing around looking through this, telescope thing, looking at LA. I think they're up on a hill. And there's this dude with like spiked hair that's blue or purple. It's Bill Paxton.
No way.
Really? First movie roles. Yeah, you have to watch for him. And so, I mean, he knew immediately what I was talking about. The quote actually came from the next one, but he got it. And I think in that one, he says, I want you to give me your clothes, because he's just come here and he doesn't have any clothes. And that's where he gets the leather jacket and stuff.
Yeah.
So Paxton is one of those dudes. And so we had a good laugh over that. And then he said, I was just in the studio and Kurt Russell was across the hallway finishing up a movie he's working on. And we were talking about Tombstone the whole time we visited. And he goes, it's both of our favorite movie. And he said, still. And I said, man, you saw Kurt? He said, yeah. I said, tell Kurt hi. He said, well, do you know Kurt? I said, no, but tell him hi.
Tell him hi anyway.
Kurt Russell's a badass.
Tell him
hi.
Tell him hi for me.
Kurt Russell in Death Proof. Dude, that's a good car movie.
It's a great car movie.
Nobody brought that.
Big Trouble
That's a
in Little
Nova,
China.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a Nova, isn't it?
Damn right, it's a Nova.
It is.
It was a good one.
So you want to get esoteric and talk about car movies. There's a John Wayne movie, believe it or not. I want to say it's Brannigan. And he gets in a Camaro that this guy in a garbage truck, like accordions and smashes like the crap out. Yeah. And he ends up escaping. Yeah. But I think it's Brannigan or there's another one. There were two, they were kind of casting John Wayne in some other roles other than Westerns, along in that part. And it's hard to see him, in England being a detective because you're like, there's got to be a horse in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Just kind of weird. But hey, I love John Wayne. Doesn't matter whether it's Atari, that kind of stuff. Right.
Man, it's been amazing. And honestly, we are absolutely doing this again.
100% we are.
We've got so much. We could just honestly, we may make this like maybe a monthly thing. Yeah. It's just oil and whiskey with Weldon. Once a month, we sit down and
oil, whiskey, and engraving.
I think you guys are way more exciting than I am.
I don't know about that.
I do have to tell you a couple of things, though.
Yeah.
I mentioned you to my cousin's husband, Chris Schuler, who has Bernie Stage Customs, and he said, "Oh man," he goes, "We use their frames all the time."
Cool.
We know them well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I told him, hey, I'm supposed to be on the podcast with these guys. He goes, oh man. So he pulls his phone out and he's like, see this this is one of their frames. See that? That's one of their frames.
Nice.
Look at this.
I love
Yeah,
it.
so yeah, cool.
Awesome.
I love it. Yeah. And I want to say thank you for wearing one of our shirts.
Right here. Had to represent.
It's
Yeah.
a good looking
It's one of my
shirt.
favorite shirts. I
Yeah,
just can't tell you how many comments I get, wearing this, because it's a great shirt. I mean, obviously it's a 1911, but it's an engraved 1911. Where else are you going to get a shirt like that? I can't afford the gun, so I got the shirt.
Shirt.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, hopefully one day, I don't know how soon, but one day I'm going to be able to call up my buddies Nick and Eli from Cabot Guns.
Drop ship that.
I'm gonna have a
Weldon
Cabot
Lister.
drop ship to you, and I'm gonna
Send
I'm
it.
not gonna be like the other guy and be like, no budget. I'm gonna be like, hey dude, like what can you do? And like
You just put my
take care of me.
initials. My initials on
Put
the
my
bottom.
initials really.
on the bottom.
Hey, go crazy on like
My initials.
my initials.
That's awesome. Yeah, we can do that. Back when I was a kid, my favorite car, I had a couple. And my first car was a 65 Chevy pickup that I paid $475 for. And it was a rolling POS, I kid you not. But I worked on that thing, rebuilt the engine twice, worked on it, sold it. And then I ended up getting a 68 AMC Javelin.
Ooh.
And it had a 304 Carter 4-barrel. It was an automatic transmission, but factory dual exhaust. And buddy boy, that thing weighed about 100 pounds, and its power to weight ratio was
bet.
kicking.
I think
Man,
get
it
it.
was fast. And so I had a lot of fun with that car, but I had a friend of mine that liked it better than me. And so we traded, and that's when I got a 71 Blazer. And I love that Blazer. And I've had, I don't know how many Blazers I've owned over time, but I think you and I, Josh, we talked about that, and 71 would be my thing. So whenever I get a Cabot in the mail,
You'd be looking for a 71 Blazer as well.
that's probably about an even trade. Roadster Shop 71 Blazer build. Cabot fully engraved.
it
gun.
doesn't have to be a hot rod. It just
needs
has
to be a good,
a nice 71 Blazer. I mean, that's a vintage thing, man. You could take the top off, the whole top
yeah.
comes off.
I've been looking for one for a while.
Yeah, Phil's a fan.
My wife and I were dating at the time, and we would ride around with the top off forever, and just had a lot of fun.
I
And
just-
she and
I just
now we've
thought I couldn't afford the gun, but now it's a 71 Blazer. I know what those grow. I definitely can't afford a new 71 Blazer.
for
Those
sure.
things are crazy right now.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, dude,
It's just nuts. It really is. It's crazy on those and old Broncos and stuff like that.
Oh,
It's just absurd. But now I married the girl, and we've been married 43 years. So
Congratulations, dude.
I didn't keep the Blazer, but I kept the chick. So
Nice move.
it all worked out. Yeah,
It's been
sorry I talked so much, guys.
No, man,
No,
this
it's been great.
This has been an absolute blast. I can't tell you how honored we are, and this
So-
was
Unbelievably. Where
cool.
can people get this shirt? AmericanScrollInc.com, right?
Yeah, American Scroll Inc. AmericanScrollInc.com.
Let's
You
get some
betcha.
shirts, guys.
Yeah.
Get on there.
Don't get this shirt. Oh, buy the shirt,
Yeah.
but
maybe a different color.
maybe different. Just I want the only one. We all got to have the only one, right? No, you got new stuff coming out all the time. They can check you out on Instagram at American Scroll, and then your personal is what at Weldon Lister, right?
That's it. That's my personal account. And, I post stuff. I used to have a website, but I don't anymore. I really don't actively seek engraving commissions on firearms anymore because I have so much of a backlog to work on. And that's what I spend most of my time doing. And I don't know, can you show guns on your podcast? I guess you can.
Absolutely
Yeah.
can. We can do whatever we want to.
It's your podcast. That's
Sure
right.
is.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Here's
That's
one
a
I just
current work.
Yeah, this is a Colt Texas Ranger commemorative. I don't know if you can read it or not on the barrel. I can't really. My screen is so small I can't see. But
What's it say on the barrel?
anyway.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh, I love the
Texas
Ranger
Rangers.
star on the
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
How much
Awesome.
harder is it to do a gun like that where everything is round and contoured versus a 1911?
It's all in your head. It really is. And so, I was fretting about that one day when I was learning, and my dad said, "Son, just think about it. Where the point of the chisel is, it's flat." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Thanks,
So
Dad.
you just go, I can do this. And so So yeah, actually, in reality, round is a little bit tougher because the chances of slipping are greater. And so what you want is just the same thing that you want in any other. When you're using a tool, you want a sharp tool. You don't want a dull one. So dull tools get you hurt. They'll easier to make mistakes with. And so make sure your tools are sharp. Make sure you're on your A game and know what you're doing. And so I have enough experience to, if I make a mistake, I'm the only one that knows it, because I know how to fix it. And being a master at anything doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. It means you're the only one that knows you did. Sometimes it takes you longer to cover up that hole that you made than it would have taken if you hadn't messed up. But
we're going to get your son on here next time.
Yeah, I think so. I really wanted him to be here. And, we had this scheduled and then you guys were out of town. And so we rescheduled. And when we did that, I didn't realize one of my grandsons plays football on Thursday night and they're at home tonight. And I thought, well, I'm not going to tell you all.
Man, I feel really bad now. I'm glad you told us that at the end versus the beginning. Makes me feel really bad.
No, but anyway, that's why he's not here because
it's more important than this.
Now, I wanted to be on here with you guys. It's a great honor to me that to think that with all of the fabulous guests you've had on your show, you would want to have me on. That's very, very humbling. And so thank each of you. Thank you.
We appreciate it. And thank you for coming on. We had an absolute blast. This has been an honor.
It's been a blast.
I wouldn't have missed it. So
thank you, sir.
That's why Billy's not here. Next time I told him, I said, hey, we're going to do the podcast. So, be here and all that. And,
well, what we're going to try to do, let's try to figure out a way. We'll talk off air in a few weeks. Let's try to figure out a time maybe towards the end of the year and get you and your son out here in studio, maybe with some guns, and you can kind of show us that stuff. And we'll do a deep dive. Now that we've kind of gotten to know each other, we'll do a deep dive into the art, the craft, and give us some pointers.
Let's do it.
We'll bring a vise and set it up on the end of your big table there.
Don't tease us with a good time. Let's do it.
Perfect. And that way we can all we can have a sip of whatever it is you're sipping on.
We'll have something real special.
Smoke a cigar and engrave some stuff.
Done.
And, we'll think it's fabulous until the next morning when we look at it and go, oh.
We're sold.
Well, then it's been an absolute blast. Yeah, everybody go check out at American Scroll on Instagram or at blah, 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 or americanscroll.com. Check out the shirts.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you, man.
Thank you very much.
Take care, man.
Thanks, guys. Y'all have a great time.
You too. Thanks.
Well, I think we can all agree. Massive thanks to Weldon Lister. Make sure you check him out on Instagram at American Scroll or at Weldon Lister. But seriously, let's go sell it. Let's go sell him out of shirts. Sell him out of shirts. It's time for whiskey review time. What time is it?
Whiskey review time.
Time for whiskey review. We have two because we've done such a poor job of reviewing whiskey. We're going to review two of them tonight.
Dun, dun, dun.
Silence. Somebody break the silence. Somebody break the silence.
So we have we've struggled a little bit because we've made our way through just about everything on the shelf. There's very few unopened bottles.
But it is bourbon season again.
It is. So it's bourbon hunting season is upon us. And
it's been crazy lately.
Fortunately, Phil brought two new bourbons that nobody's tried to the table. Where did these come from? Or were these procured?
Liquor store.
These were procured at two different liquor stores. Am I driving around one day?
So Old Elk always delivers.
So Garfield's Beverage and Liquor, beverage Warehouse.
If you're going to buy them,
Garfield's.
that's where you should get them.
Liquor Warehouse.
Because there's probably a store pick or something like that. But
Garfield's Liquors.
Old Elk, always solid. Kentucky 10, I've never heard of it before, so.
I got duped on it. Kentucky 10, thought it was a 10-year, says weeded. It was in the special case. It was only $29.
I'm going to, first off.
I called that, though.
This has nothing to do with the taste we're going to get to review. It pisses me off when people just put random numbers for no reason because it does that shit where you're like, oh, it's a 10-year.
Yeah.
It's just
well, that's the entire reason they did it.
I know. But it's fucking stupid.
Sons of bitches.
Yeah, it's stupid.
At any rate, I'll say that although the marketing is very deceptive, it's good.
Yeah.
It's actually really good.
Completely not what I was expecting.
No. Well, here in the fine print on the back, aged a minimum of 2 years in new oak. Okay, so it's light proof, right? 90 proof. It's good. I really like that. That's a solid drinker. That's a definite buy it. I don't know where I'd rate it. I don't know.
Back those up though.
You say hit
Back
one,
them
hit
up.
the other.
Yeah.
It's light. You know,
It is light. Doesn't have the legs, as they say, but it does not have that young.
Shitty taste.
Yeah,
I mean,
great way of saying it.
as your boy Palatine Mike could say, I say the Old Elk dunks on the Kentucky 10.
Does it dunk or does it slap?
It's well, I don't know. You tell me.
I'm not sure. We have to bring someone who's 30, 35 years old in to give us a definition on that.
At any rate, if I saw that Kentucky 10 for the price point, that's a buy it. You know,
Oh,
it's
absolutely
a buy
right. I think it's a super deal for that price of the $29, $35, whatever it was.
Tough to rate it though, because it's just an easy drinker. Like it's a conversation bourbon. You just kind of like throw that there, hanging out with some.
I'd throw it like
buddies.
a
You just-
Buffalo Trace.
100%.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
exactly where I was going. That's a
Great,
drinker
smooth,
like a
drink it.
Good call.
100%, and it's a little bit more unique than a Buff Trace. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's a 6.8 for me.
I was going 6.9.
7-0. So I was excited when I found it and thought it was a 10-year.
Good.
It's
That's a nice little cluster there.
Yeah,
it's a
it
tight
really-
cluster.
Having
I've never
if
seen
we were
it.
to if we were to drink
I've
it
never seen it before either.
in full disclosure, had we drunk that by itself tonight,
I would have rated higher.
probably got 0.2 more.
Yeah, but the
probably
old,
would have got 2
the
points.
Old Elk fucking crushed it.
Oh, the
sure.
Old Elk Akeem Olajuwon junk in the face dunked on.
Over the top, big sky hook.
Yeah, this is Olajuwon on Muggsy Bogues dunking. So that's just full blown.
Yeah, not in my house. Oh, that's Dikembe Mutombo.
Yeah, it's Dikembe.
Yeah, it's
Okay, not in my house.
That was not a dunk either. That was
That's
a
a block.
That was the finger.
Hey,
roll.
he's in the right sport. I mean,
Doing
give him
all right. That's
yeah.
not bad for me.
basketball.
right sport, right era.
Yes.
That's
Those are two positives, right?
a 3-pointer for you.
Indeed.
Yeah,
Slam.
that's outside.
Yeah, slam dunk, as they say.
You know what?
Cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
The Old Elk. This was another one of Phil's contributions here. 8-year weeded.
Weeded.
This kicks ass. That's
The Old Elk has always fought above its weight class.
It has.
But
we
this-
we expressed our gripes with it getting a little too much like the barrel bourbon, where they need to change the damn bottle because they've got so many and they're all good. So I'll say that because they've got their they're different weededs, their cigar blends, their single barrels, their everything, and it's the only way you can tell the difference is that one little sticker.
You could read.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I know. You ha-
read
it is-
That's
I-
the sticker you
I
have
agree
to read.
with you.
But
I agree with you.
I like a
Yeah. This one's the same logo as the regular weed. It's just a little 8 next to it.
Weller, for all the
change the
things they
colors.
do bad, right, in the way they do things,
What do they do bad?
they fuck around with the market a little bit, right? Let's be honest.
I think you fuck around with the Weller market.
yeah. Josh is
No, no.
You fuck the Weller market.
You've impacted the Weller market
That's
single-handedly.
no, I have not.
In the locally, you have in the
That'd be-
Chicagoland area, you have. Fucking,
That would be my wife.
Yeah.
She takes full blame for that.
Does she?
I just reap the
Is
benefits.
she walking funny? How's she?
With what she came home with last week, she need to put an ice pack on. I can't. Yeah, you don't.
Yeah, good for her. Though.
Yeah,
But
good.
anyway, this
We're
is
gonna class up the end of that issue.
But
Yeah,
to
this
my
is-
point, Weller has the same exact logo, the same exact label, but they change the colors, right? So you know from afar what's there. The Old Elk, I get the fact that they want everything branded the same. It is difficult, especially when they've got the amount of expressions that they've got now. I mean, at the liquor store the other day, I guarantee there was like 15 or 16
Really?
of the different ones. Yeah.
it's been a minute since I've had any Old Elk. I do love just about everything they do. Not a huge fan of the Infinity Blend. Infinity Blend's pretty hot,
Yeah, it's too hot for me. You were a huge fanboy on that
I
one.
did like it. I did like it a lot.
but I'm gonna say without recently having any of their other releases, this could be my favorite of what they've got.
I'm with you.
And I'm gonna hit that at like a 7.8. I think it's good.
I was going 7.75.
I think it's really good.
Like a good round number.
Yep.
Yeah. Big fan.
Yeah, great
Yeah.
bourbon.
One of the best ones I've had in a while.
I'm going 7.8 as well. I'm excited. So we haven't tried the cigar blend yet.
What's the proof?
And
Do you have it?
we all three have it. Okay. All right. So let's.
Grant, you had it first.
I haven't tried it. Phil did have it first.
I just wanted to rub it in your face if you didn't have it because I didn't think you'd.
I do have it. I've got the 10-year of that weeded as well. So I'm anxious to try that and see.
Is that hard to get? Is this something that's like allocated or?
I don't know. It was
Garfield's Beverage Warehouse,
it was
Liquor Emporium.
glass case deal.
You said
behind the counter.
7.75?
Yep.
7.8.
I just like sticking to a solid quarter numbers.
I know you do. You make it a little more difficult for me to write.
I'm sorry.
This is a
That's a buy two of them. I'd stick two
what's
of
this?
those.
$80
on the shelf.
70.
Yeah, 80, 90, I think.
That's a spend.
It's been a while since we've killed one.
They've got a.
It
That's
is.
what you keep going back to.
They've got a something else that was sherry cask finished. That was age statement as well.
I got one of the old sherry casks, and I didn't like it that much.
Maybe it was port wine. It was something. It was a newer one. It was age statement that was a finished. I tell you what, we're gonna getting a little tired of asking for him to be on the podcast. Honestly,
Have you asked?
yeah, we've asked about four fucking times. I'll ask a fifth, and that'll be the end. I don't ask 6 times.
Did I?
Greg Metz. Do you know anything about this guy?
No, but I'll tell you that now that it's the finish is horrible. As like the initial taste is great, but it's starting to like the
Oh, after you know that he's not going to be on the podcast,
it's like
he's changed
yeah,
that.
it almost like a rubbery kind of like I almost feel like I need to regurgitate it.
So this dude really is. Greg Metz is that's the master distiller, but the guy that owns Old Elk, and his name escapes me right now. Tells you how many times I've wrote that email. He's an interesting story. So he was the one that started
He's behind
Lifeproof.
Otterbox.
It could be that one.
Yeah, it's that one.
Was it Otterbox?
Yeah.
All right. So
Otterbox?
Otterbox. You sure?
Pretty sure. I don't think he's coming on the podcast either way now.
All this could be edited out. We'll get to the part where we know what we're talking about.
Here's one for you, Josh. If you're gonna be beating the bushes, Dan Calloway from Bardstown Bourbon.
Okay.
They did a little bourbon seminar that was kind of like bourbon versus rye at the Bourbon and Beyond Fest. Pretty cool dude. Had a lot of insight.
Really?
Yeah, be a good guy if you could use your skills.
I'd like to point this out.
You're
Who
right.
was correct.
You're right. 100%. Otterbox.
Otterbox like the phone thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he doesn't want to fuck around with this, dude. This Otterbox is a big deal.
He's not doing Otterbox anymore. He's doing Old Elk.
Yeah, he sold that.
He didn't,
He
didn't give it away.
He didn't
Like
just
he
stop
said-
doing it.
So
He
because,
fucking sold it.
but he's got a great business, Old Elk. He's trying to promote it. I want to talk to him.
Floating around the Mediterranean right now.
That's not. That's untrue. He's a big gun guy too.
Google image it then. Kurt Richardson images.
Yeah. Okay. There he is,
Well-
right there. Look, he's right there on his fucking farm.
Okay.
He's got a huge
Okay.
ranch, great
Well,
bar
then-
out there in
Then
the.
Google Kurt Richardson yacht. I'm telling you, see what comes up. See what comes up. Let's see. And I could be wrong.
He's definitely not coming.
No, that's a.
That's not him. These are just yachts.
Yeah,
you can't just. Yeah, you can't just. These are just yachts.
Anyway, thanks for listening to Oil and Whiskey.
All right. So Kurt's never coming on.
All right.
What was the guy you said from Bardstown?
Danny, let me pull this up. Dan Calloway from Bardstown Bourbon Company, which Bardstown's a newer distillery. I don't know if they distill their own.
Yeah, they
Bourbon,
do.
I believe they do.
It's not newer.
Very
but it
well,
is-
very well spoken
the
dude.
brand is newer.
He gave this kind of seminar, kind of explaining, what goes into a rye, what goes into a bourbon. It was enlightening. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, rye's got more rye than
Hence the
Obviously.
name.
corn or wheat.
So yeah, if he wants to like
He did a thing.
He wants to slum it and come down to do something.
We'll
like
reach
this.
out.
We could,
Dude, fuck. If first of all, I don't give a fuck who they are. He could be the inventor of life-proof OtterBox, Tesla. Honestly, Elon Musk doesn't hold a candle to Weldon Lister.
I agree, 100%. Elon Musk has. How many stories do you think Elon Musk has about hanging out with Hank Jr.?
I'll go out on a limb. I would say it's zero.
What do you think?
I could see 1 or 2 on Junior, none on Senior.
Yeah, he is.
You've got the means. I can see it happening.
100% confidence he has 0 Hank Sr. stories.
Yeah, 100%.
Back to your point, I bet you there's a greater chance he has Hank Sr. stories than he does have Hank Williams Jr. stories, but it's the frozen version. I bet you he's hanging out with the cryogenically frozen Hank Sr.
You think Hank? I thought only John Wayne was frozen. That's what Dennis Leary said.
Yep.
Is that the?
Yeah, oh,
there's
yeah.
more people than that are frozen.
Really?
Yeah, there's like
you seen the
entire
movie?
mountainsides that are carved out for frozen celebrities.
Get the fuck out of here. Who's frozen?
All kinds of famous people.
Like who? Other than John Wayne. And,
Other than John
and
Wayne?
Dennis Leary said that, so it's a fact.
Here comes the bullshit.
No, there's. What's the guy's name?
Huh? With the kind of. Oh, he was in
Channing
that.
Tatum has a spot set up. He hasn't been frozen
Channing
yet,
Tatum's got 50 years left.
but he's already bought a plot.
He's a young
He's bought
man.
a plot in the frozen celebrity.
Where do you come up with this shit?
You Google it. I'm telling you, there's
an
an entire cabal.
That's honestly
Around frozen celebrities.
Frozen celebrities.
That's honestly something
They do
I will
tours.
not Google.
You think I'm making that shit up? You don't think there's frozen celebrities out there?
I think they're probably.
You don't think they store them in one place?
No.
For efficiency's sake, for how many fucking freezers you're gonna have? You should absolutely do them in one.
Google it. We have the fucking power of Google it right now.
It's only
Google it now.
Frozen celebrities.
We got a direct message the other day from a dude from Australia, and he says it kills me every time that you all say nobody's listening.
I
by
saw
now.
that.
And he's like, "Am I the only one that's listening?"
Yes,
Dude,
you are.
Shout out to you right now. Yes, it's
He's
just
lit-
us four hanging.
He's listening right now. So
What am I?
frozen celebrities. You're the one that brought it up. This is the craziest thing to Google. List of people who arranged for cryonics.
Man, that's funny that they've already arranged for it.
It's
prior to.
Wikipedia,
This-
dude. There's probably you could Google me and it'd probably be on Wikipedia. Everything's on there.
Robin Hansen. Robin
Hansen with an O.
Seth MacFarlane.
MacFarlane. Yeah, MacFarlane. Yeah.
He looks frozen already. Or fake.
Anders Sandberg?
Deceased people that have been cryo.
Well, those are So all right.
Dick Clare, Peter Eckersley, Robert. Yeah. Look at all these fucking people. Dude, the
No,
list,
but
Ted
there's-
Williams. Fuck you, Ted Williams. You don't even know nothing about Ted
Hey, he's
Williams.
a
do you?
baseball player.
Yeah, exactly. Remember the Ted Williams baseball card?
No.
It was
that was-
that or the Horace Grant. That was the only.
Yeah, when
Honus
you were-
Wagner.
when you-
Honus Wagner.
Right.
Horace Grant.
We were trading. Me and Phil were trading Ken Griffey Jr. rookie cards back
Yes,
when we were
you
kids.
and the entire country because they made $2 fucking billion.
Right, but when
and they
you
weren't
were
worth shit,
shut the fuck up. When you were a kid, you were trading Ted Williams cards
or Honus Wagner,
Exactly.
or Horace Grant.
Right. Horace Grant.
That's what it was. Yeah,
Famous.
yeah, he was.
You remember Horace Grant had a brother, like a twin brother?
Barry Grant.
No,
Now he is a carburetor guy.
not famous for the 6-shooter though. Very Grant.
He was famous
Briefly.
for a failure.
Briefly.
For the 6-shooter as being a fucking failure. We're gonna go. Hold on. It's just us hanging out. Who was?
Whoever's having to edit
What are
this.
you looking at now?
I'm gonna give a shout out to the guy that's
Our sole listener on the live
yeah,
show.
the sole listener.
Oh,
I'm
that's
trying
some
to find it.
air on a 3-wheeler right there.
Who sent that?
Who was it that sent that?
It was a comment on something.
Oh, was it a comment?
It was a comment.
Okay. Nope,
Keep
not
scrolling.
that.
No, keep scrolling. It was.
Oh.
Yes.
So Devin _Keith _, right?
Yeah, don't trust him. He's got 2 first names.
Devin Keith.
Yeah.
He's got a fucking badass dually, though.
Yeah, we're going to follow him right now. We're following him back. So Devin _Keith _ everybody go follow him right now because it's just us four. We're doing it, and he's listening.
What's up, Devin?
What's up, Devin?
Is that considered a ute if he's in Australia?
Is he in Australia?
Yeah, because in Australia.
Oh, that's cool.
I think. I don't know. Maybe I made that.
Yeah, no, that was just go back.
It's tomorrow in Australia.
Or click on his profile.
Where did you come
Underneath his name, scroll up. NB, that's a Canadian flag, isn't it?
Fucking Canadian flag in a... The hell did you
Maybe he's not in Australia. Maybe I made that part up. But he's not in
It's
US.
definitely not a ute then.
That is a Canadian flag, isn't it? I can't see.
Which, for the listeners, very close to the Australian flags. Yeah, often confused.
Yeah.
I mean, did you think he looks Australian? Like
Maybe.
any of the pictures with all the...
It's a busy day. All right. I had lots of things going on. Maybe I read 2 comments and mixed them together. I apologize.
So somebody else is listening and commented?
To Devin's
into some cool shit, though. Look at that fucking quad cab.
Yeah.
GMC dually.
They're crew cabs. It's not a quad cab.
I'm gonna be honest. There's a lot of pictures of the kid.
That's what I said.
A lot of pictures of the kid.
Is it too many for you?
Yeah.
He's proud of his kid.
He's borderline too many pictures of the kid. Save that for your wife. Let her post those pictures.
It's a new kid. Okay?
You have one fan and you're shredding him.
Right.
No, we're hanging out. I'm not gonna.
He's not here.
I ain't gonna fake it. Like my friends, we bust balls.
Dude,
right?
Look at his fucking crib, though. Look at that. Yeah, a man can dream. Yes, a man can
Sure
dream.
can. Look at that.
Fucking unit.
Yeah, he does have cool taste in some cars and trucks.
Cooler than you do.
Wonder that was back in the day, 43 weeks ago. Wonder if he regrets that Bud Light picture.
I'm surprised he hasn't taken that down.
Yeah. Guess what? Next time we do an episode, it's just us 3, because that 4th listener ain't
just
listening
lost
no
him.
more. Old Devin _Keith _ is not listening no mo.
Me and Phil are going to send him some T-shirts or something to keep him as a listener. Because you're insulting.
No, I wasn't insulting. I was being. We're hanging. You want to be part of the guys? We're going to be fucking part of the guys, right?
Okay.
Not going to fake it. Oh, Devin, super cool. Love your kid. Awesome pictures of your cars. Friends bust balls.
There's a trial period, though, where you got to be nice before you start being an asshole.
Exactly. It's years. That takes years.
Yeah, you got to build
Bullshit. Doesn't take fucking years.
build
nice.
the
If
circle of
You're
trust.
wasting time.
How
You're
long?
wasting time.
I was nice to you for how many years? Seriously.
0.2 years.
So
Less than a year.
like 4 months. You're saying?
Right.
Basically 3 months.
Right. So it doesn't take years.
Okay.
What if you do a trial period with somebody and you give it 3 years
Yeah.
and then you start cutting them and they're said, fuck this, I'm done. No more. You wasted 3 fucking years of your life to figure out the guy was a fucking pussy and couldn't take it? Point.
Okay. Point. Duly noted.
7.8, 7.75, and 7.8
2 solid bourbons.
on Old Elk 8-year weeded. 687069 on Kentucky 10. That's both buy it's
Yep.
Absolutely.
and seek it out for a 8-year.
Buy it in the Old Elks.
did.
Buy 2, so you don't feel bad drinking the
We'll
one.
get old Kurt Richardson on here from Otterbox. Fucking over here, life proof.
We'll take our phones and we can
This
chuck
guy.
them at the wall. You know,
This guy.
that's what they're known for, right? Those rugged phone
Yes.
cases.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening to Oil and Whiskey and Ironclad Original. If you like the show, you do the things that if you like the show down there at the bottom. Like, subscribe. Send us a comment. We might talk about you on the podcast, and you won't listen
And
anymore.
Josh might insult you and make you not a listener anymore.
Stay around next week. Stay around. Stick around.
Fuck, you are murdering this ending.
Josh,
I've had too many whiskeys.
he's had a few too many
Stick
Chardonnays.
around. Maybe we'll see you next week.
It's been a long week.
Don't stay waiting.